It is 4 o'clock. Let's get started. Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me well? Awesome. Welcome to the 11th annual Business Analytics Competition at Manhattan University, or as we like to call it, back at MU 2026. My name is Amir Masumi. I'm an associate professor of management here, and I'm co-chair of the organizing committee for the analytics competition on behalf of myself, the other co-chair of the competition, Dr. Horan Zhang in the back, and the organizing committee and the O'Malley School of Business. I would like to welcome every one of you. I really want to keep my welcome remarks short. We have an afternoon and evening packed with a lot of important stuff, more important stuff than my welcome remarks. So I'm just showing you a couple of slides, and then I'll tell you about the schedule of the evening. A very short background and history of the competition. We started this back in 2015. Every single year since then, we ran this competition with the exception of the COVID year, which we had to cancel in the last minute. 2 years in 21 and 22, we did this virtually. Now we're back to in person. In the last 11th competition, 76 universities from the US, the UK, Romania, Canada, Mexico, and Palestine have participated in this event. And then this was interesting to me. I was doing my research last night. 26 different US states have participated. So I think soon we have to go after the ones that haven't sent a team yet. This shows the geographical distribution of the teams in this year's competition. We have a total of 21 teams from 19 institutions. I mean, obviously, most of the teams are from the Northeast and East, but we have teams from South Carolina, Illinois, Ohio, 2 from Texas, 1 from Mexico, and 1 from California. So what else might be interesting to you, that out of the 19 institutions, 13 of them are private schools, 6 are public schools, 11 are returning teams, and 8 are first-time participants. So let me extend a warm welcome to the teams that are attending for the first time. Bridgewater College, Delaware State, Rutgers, South Carolina, Tecnológico de Monterrey, UConn, University of Illinois Springfield, and University of New Haven. And then for the returning schools, we have Fairfield University, LaSalle, Lehigh, Loyola Marymount, the host team, Otterbein, Ramapo College of New Jersey, St. Mary's University of Texas, UMass Amherst, Trinity University of Texas, and St. John's University. So thank you for coming back. I hope you bring teams again, faculty advisors in the competitions in the future as well. Last slide I'm gonna show, this shows the teams that are here this year, the teams with most appearances. Well, LaSalle University actually registered, but couldn't make it in the last minute. So, and we can pat ourselves on the back because we had to send a team every year. But I guess Otterbein, Ramapo College of New Jersey, St. John's, Trinity, Fairfield, thanks for being loyal customers of our competition. Again, I hope you come back again. So the schedule of today's events, there's a QR code on this wall, and if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the program book where you can see the details of the schedule. But briefly, after my message, I'm going to turn it over to my dean for his welcome remarks. Then we'll have a keynote talk and a fireside chat. This is going to be done by almost 5 o'clock. So from 5 to 7 is the poster presentations on the 4th floor, 1 flight down. And then dinner will start at 7 o'clock. Also, we have the draw for phase 2 semifinal round during the dinner ceremony, so please make sure at least you have 1 representative in the dinner. So without further ado, I now introduce Dr. Hani Girgis, Dean of the O'Malley School of Business, to whom the committee is very grateful for his support of the competition, and to our Associate Dean, Dr. Shah as well. Dean Girgis will now formally introduce our speaker. Thank you so much.
Slides, right? Yeah, but not right now.
Okay.
So let me just go to the first place. Good afternoon. Thanks, Dr. Masumi. My name is Hani Gargis. I am the Dean of O'Malley School of Business, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to 2026 Business Analytics Competition at Manhattan University. At Manhattan University, we see analytics as more than working with numbers, at least from my experience as an econometrician. It's about identifying insights, addressing real problems, and supporting better business decisions. For that reason, we place a strong emphasis on analytics in both our curriculum and our co-curriculum activities. This includes a focused one-year sequence in programming, artificial intelligence, and machine learning for our undergraduate students. We also provide clear pathways for students who wish to continue their graduate education. Beginning in fall 2026, we will expand our graduate offering to include 3 master's programs that integrate analytics with finance and digital marketing. Our low residency master program provide an efficient way for students to complete their graduate degree within 1 year at the doorstep of Manhattan, home of the world's leading financial centers. Our business analytic competition also reflects our commitment to applied learning by bringing together talented students like you from the whole country, from other foreign countries, to address real-world challenges. This event is further distinguished by the presence of accomplished and internationally recognized speakers. Today, we are especially pleased to welcome Dr. Randy Anderson, a respected leader whose career brings academic research and real-world investment practice. Dr. Anderson currently serves as Director of Real Estate Program at the University of South Florida, where he leads program development and teaches courses in real estate finance and investment. He is widely regarded as a leading scholar in his field, with more than 100 publications focused on REITs, real estate securities, and portfolio constructions. And I was lucky to be co-author in maybe at least 10 articles with him. His research has played an important role in shaping how real estate is understood within modern investment portfolios. He has also contributed to the advancement of the field through his involvement with leading academic journals and as a frequent speaker at major industry and academic conferences. In addition to his academic accomplishments, Dr. Anderson brings intensive industry experience. He has held senior executive roles, including partner at Apollo Global Management and chief executive officer of Griffin Capital Asset Management. In these positions, he helped lead real estate investment platforms exceeding $10 billion and advanced strategy that expand access to institutional real estate investment. This evening's program will begin with a keynote address by Dr. Anderson, followed with our fire talk, and then we'll open the floor to questions and answer sessions. Dr. Anderson, welcome.
How's everybody doing? Is this working? So, the first thing that's kind of ironic to me, and I don't think it's working, I have a loud enough voice though to carry the room, is we're at a business analytic contest at Manhattan College. All those papers that Dr. Girgis, the dean here, talked about publishing, I didn't know how to do any of the analytics on it. If it wasn't for him, I would have gotten most of those publications. So it's funny to me that from a business analytic time, my time back.
For live streaming reasons.
Okay.
You have to hold the mic, please. Sorry.
Is it?
But I think they're live streaming the event,
Yeah.
so that's actually working out.
Hello? Yep. Okay. Perfect. I'll lose my voice by the end of it otherwise. So, listen, I always appreciated working with Haney, and also one of our other co-authors is coming soon. Also, before we get started, and I'll even talk a little bit about last night, this morning, and kind of how AI played into my life. But let's have a round of applause for all the students here. So, in addition to having a large industry career, I've spent a lot of time with students. And I think about something a professor said when I was an undergrad. He goes, the habits that you build as a student will carry on to your work life. He's like, listen, people that didn't do a good job as a student, they think they're going to wake up, snap their fingers, and become a good employee, and it never happens. And this guy was the president of US Tech Steel. How old I am, you guys are thinking about AI. This is back when they were teaching BASIC for programming. But that was very true, and it really meant a lot to me. Now I also think about how expensive education is. It's one of the most expensive things that people choose not to consume. I'm sure that many of you aren't even getting credit for what you're doing. This is consuming something above and beyond what you're required to do. After years and years of observation, it's not the student who necessarily was at the best school. It wasn't necessarily the student who was the smartest, but it's the one that took advantage to consume all the education that they could, above and beyond. You got to consume it to know it and to learn it. And listen, the world and labor markets aren't necessarily efficient in the short term. So you come out, maybe somebody from somewhere gets a better job than you, but over time, you come out, you have the skills, you end up at the very top. So what you're doing today says you guys are highly likely to be at that very top across the board. So you should be proud of yourselves to be here. Most people won't do that. By being here, you've already won. Whether you win the contest or not, you've already won, because how many people made a choice at your schools not to do this, right? All right, it's a pretty big deal. All right. So, a little bit on AI. I'll come back to real estate in a minute, but how did my morning go? Did I use AI? How many people used AI today so far, besides the competition? It's almost everybody. All right. So did I. All right. So, what did I do? Well, I got up and I switched microphones.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And I'm right here. And I was at a different place. So I'm at home. By the way, I'm a creature of habit. I have the same breakfast every single morning. It's not very exciting, but it's the same one. You know why? Because when I put all of my biomarkers in and my blood work in, and I put all that stuff into AI, put my age in there, what I'm trying to optimize for, going, hey, please don't let me drop dead of a heart attack, it gave me a certain breakfast to eat. But I was staying at a hotel around here. I had no stove, no kitchen. I took a picture of all of the things that were there, that was available to eat, and asked, what should I eat? And it told me exactly what to do, told me what not to do. At one time, I used to eat all of the things, and let's say I was a little larger than I am today. And so I like to try to work out so I can stay healthy, keep the brain sharp. I go to the gym, and there's like no equipment there. I'm like, all right, I got to do back and biceps today. How do you actually do that in this gym with like 3 dumbbells and a treadmill? It told me, okay, well, all that was pretty good. But when I'm on the treadmill, I get a call. Anybody ever heard of the ICSC? It's basically a conference for people that do shop. You guys all go to shopping centers, like to buy stuff? Yeah, I mean, most people do. You go to a mall, you see Simon Property Group. You're in Florida, where I live, if you go to the grocery store, you're probably going to a Publix. And next to the Publix is a whole bunch of inline tenants that you might get your hair cut at. You might pick up some dog supplies and all that kind of stuff. So I had a friend, he was doing a presentation like me. He was actually a former PhD student of mine. And he goes, you know what I forgot to do? It was Josh, by the way, who was also published with us. And he's like, I forgot to rank the top 10 non-anchored, you don't need to worry about what this is. It's a certain kind of non-anchored retail centers. He goes, can you help me? Because I'm away from a computer. He was in Las Vegas, which made me think, why did he lose his computer? There's Wi-Fi. You can have a computer in Las Vegas. Maybe you stayed out too long. I don't know. So I go, sure. Now, back in the old days, I used to be a chief economist and market analyst. I used to love the data. I used to go grab the data from 5 different sources. I'd pull it all together. I'd rank markets. And we thought we had a little strategic edge over the competitors. And we did. We could pay a little bit more on a market that we thought was growing. We'd stay away maybe from a market that wasn't doing so well. In fact, the data analytics that we did said to sell all of our real estate holdings at the end of 2025, the beginning of 26. Now, it was a year early, but guess what happened a year after that? The global financial crisis, when everything sort of fell to the ground. Now, to do what my friend asked me to do would have normally taken me like 3 or 4 weeks. But what did I do? I grabbed 2 different research AIs first. By the way, I have data all loaded up and trained in these things. That's an important part of it. We'll talk about that, right? I mean, no good data, you know, it's like anything else. Garbage in and garbage out. Exactly right. Yeah. So which 2 do you think I used to do my deep research? No analytics. That'll come up in a second. What are the 2 I did first? I used Chat Deep Research and one other deep research, Perplexity, right? Ask it to go out there, do some deep research on markets. By the way, gave it a good prompt, spent a long time learning prompting, right? The prompts also help me get the vitamins and stuff and things like that, so I don't drop over dead while we're talking here. Anyway, and then I got all this information coming out, and then the best one for analytics is, at least for that kind of analytics, is Claude. So I took those results, threw it in Claude. By the way, Claude kicked out a nice table of all the markets, all the metrics I asked it to, and I asked it simultaneously to kick out a PowerPoint that it could present live. So at the same time, while we're getting these nice market rankings showing the metrics on why we rank the markets that way, we also got a PowerPoint version that he could put together that had charts, had graphs, had pictures of buildings, had pictures of markets from the actual markets in which they're in. That's pretty neat, right? It's pretty neat. So that happened today. Now, besides that, just a few days ago, coming up on my 30th wedding anniversary, I think I'm pretty likable. My wife, I don't know, debatable probably, she thinks. So we're talking about where to go on a 30-year anniversary. So anybody want to go on a safari? No? Nobody wants to go? Why? It's not your thing? Mosquitoes? All the shots you got to take to go? The heat? All right. Well, I don't know. Listen, for whatever reason, I want to go. It's usually a popular choice. I'm a little concerned about this crowd. But anyway, my wife's been saying no every year for 30 years. So I'm like, I can't convince her. I'm usually pretty persuasive. My whole life, by the way, yeah, I've made good investment decisions, but it's actually been able to raise capital. You know what you're doing to raise capital? You're selling stuff to people. So I can't sell my wife. I sold her once. It was a quick close. I asked her to marry me in 2 weeks, and she said yes. It was all cash. There's no cash, but I figured if she did any diligence on me, it'd probably be a no. So anyway, so I actually went in and asked Chat ways to convince my wife that maybe it'd be a good idea to go on the 30th anniversary there. And you know, it gave me a really good idea. You know what my wife likes a lot, and a lot more than me? My kids. And so if I agreed to bring the kids and get them on board, she would say yes. So I spent a lot of time working on the kids, telling them how cool it was going to be. They agreed to go. My son is 27. He's a PhD student. My daughter's 23, just out of school. And when they said yes, Mom's like, that sounds like a good idea. She was on the phone trying to book it, so I will be going there. So a lot of what people are using AI for is actually things that aren't complicated. A lot of people are using it almost as a therapist or somebody to talk to or talk about advice, get guidance. That's one of the highest use cases. And different ones are better for other things. Now, I will tell you that I sent a lot of emails to the prestigious dean here. And I would tell you that most of the emails would come back to me like, I have no idea what it is you just said here because I had typos everywhere and I wrote it real fast and I moved on to the next thing. What is this? What do you mean? I don't understand. None of these are actually words. So what is a really easy AI to use to clean your emails up so I never have that mistake anymore? It's probably Copilot, right? I just hit a little button, makes my emails great. Sometimes though, by the way, still doesn't do a very great job. Now, one more thing before, I haven't started my presentation yet, have I? That's all right. Have you guys ever heard of the hot stove effect? No? What do you think it might be? If you touch a hot stove, what happens? You get burned. Do you touch it again? Is what? Say again. It hurts, well, if you touch it again, it definitely hurts more. And then maybe you shouldn't be in this contest. I don't know. What school are you from? You know those comments I made earlier? I don't know. Maybe it's not you. All right. But anyway, which school? No. I need your name in case I'm ever trying to employ anyone. I can take a hard pass. But anyway, the hot stove effect is basically you try something and it's not good. You probably don't do it again. Okay. So here's the thing. I know people that much younger than me, they should be into technology, right? They should be like cranking around on this stuff and doing stuff and working faster, working smarter, learning data analytics, learning how to use it with AI, learning how to do all the things, right? To be smarter, to be better, to be more informed. The problem is, in 2022, when it kind of first came out, I have a friend, it's actually my son's friend, who works at Tinder. He's a data scientist there. Believe it or not, they got more data than you can possibly imagine there. Oh, well, I guess you would believe it. Right, so there's a lot of data analytic hires there. In fact, by the way, think about this for a second. He got the highest job offer of any student out of my son's undergraduate school, including all the people that went to work for the Apollos, the Goldman Sachs, all those places, because you've got to have some really good skills to work there. He's had 3 promotions since. He's been out of school for 3 years. I think he made $500 and some thousand last year. Not so bad. I don't know. But anyway, the problem is that a few people tried it, it didn't work, it hallucinated, and they just stopped looking at it. The truth is, what it is today doesn't even resemble what it was before. I remember my son and I were back, and we just pulled it up on my computer. I downloaded the first version of Chat, and he had a business history class in his PhD program. We're like, let's look at a topic and see what kind of paper it could crank out on this thing, right? It had to do with company towns. He wrote a paper on, you guys know what those were? Basically towns that were set up where everybody kind of lived around them, and it's like, oh, we'll make a little community, and so everybody had a home, but they also kind of controlled and monitored people. Some ended up terrible, some ended up okay, just kind of depended on lots of different factors. But anyway, we read it and it sounded so good, but it quoted the paper between me and you. It was really a paper that you wrote in a year that a paper you were published by something else. Like, none of it matched, right? Read pretty well, but it was sort of nonsense. Well, okay. Today you go and do that. Maybe you get one of those, maybe not. But it's very, very different. It's changing and it's evolving rapidly. So let's talk about my area of field of real estate. And besides the market analysis, what's going on in it, okay? And I want to get through it because I want to get to our fireside chat. But the main estimates are that between software, between training, between people, between licensing, it's going to be $1.3 trillion spent on some sort of stuff, if you will, on the implementation, the people, the training, and AI. It's a big number. That's just for commercial real estate, okay? 1.3 trillion. It's a 34% annualized growth rate between now and then. 92% of firms are doing something. Now, I, for the life of me, can't figure out the 8% that are doing nothing. Like, are you not piloting at least co-pilot? So my daughter, going back to my daughter, she's had like 16 ideas on what her jobs are going to be. So she decided to sell commercial real estate, which I have no idea why. I didn't know anything about it, but we'll see. She's a nice daughter. Love her very much. Their firm, you know what the name of the firm is? It's kind of a cool name, but it also tells you it's a small firm. It's called the Dirt Dogs. It's Eschenbaugh Real Estate. Just a couple offices around Florida. Do you know what? That little firm, they have got all their data organized. They got one person in charge of the P&L of it, the implementation of it. And they literally can kick out something called the LOI, letter of intent. So somebody calls in and wants to build a property. It's automated now. Nobody's typing it out. Nobody's filling in the blanks. They hit a button, the LOI comes immediately out. There's something called a broker opinion of value. They've automated their little system to be able to do things to create a broker opinion of value, which helps sort of set the price, if you will, for commercial real estate within your ecosystem with the press of a button. And this is a small shop with small buttons that has an office in Orlando, an office in Tampa, Florida, and that's it, and all they sell is land. Who are these other 8%? I don't know. I thought about that a little bit. And I was thinking, okay, well, I have a friend. He's a 4th generation real estate family. They've had a lot of money for a long time. They don't use outside capital, they don't need to market, and all they do is build those grocery-anchored retail centers. They've been doing the same thing since the beginning of time. Their models are set up, their relationships are set up, everything they do is set up. They're building 4 of those, maybe $30, $40 million properties a year, so it's not a nothing company, it's a pretty serious company, but it's all kind of on autopilot, so, and the founder of it's probably 70s, probably like, I don't know, we're good. But outside of that, it's hard to think about it. So pretty much everybody is. And by the way, since this survey came out, you know, it's probably 100%. $34 billion of efficiency gains. So one of the things I want to emphasize a little bit is if you buy real estate, anybody here a finance major, minor? Anybody have any finance? All right, so you guys, when you price a perpetual security, like something you think is going to grow at the same rate forever, you basically take the cash flow and you divide it by some sort of discount rate. In real estate, they call that the cap rate. So let's just call a cap rate 5% today. It's a little higher, but makes the math easier. Every dollar of savings creates $20 of value. So you're thinking at the property level, if you're the person that can show the owner of that property how to save $1, you're actually showing them how to save $20. All of a sudden you show them how to save $1 million, that's a lot of money. Maybe they want to hang you around for a little while because you may be able to do that at scale. You may be able to do some things that make a lot of sense in the marketplace. And that's happening today. We'll show you some examples. So again, this just shows you that growth. That just shows you the size of the market and the projected growth. And really, I think it's now where things are really coming in. How many people felt it? You know, sometimes things you can just feel. When did you guys feel that things had changed? It almost felt like things were slowing down into 25 to me. But then all of a sudden, I woke up, and there was that new drop, and I was like, wait a minute. This is different, right? So you got to wonder what's coming next. But I do think 2026 is a tipping point. It's very different. You know, it's even different in the universities. Anybody had professors tell them that, oh, you work on a project outside of class that you're cheating if you use AI? Anybody? Raise your hand. It's okay. Yeah, all right. That was the norm. I'd be on so many text strings where everybody was like, hey, I can't believe it. How do I keep all these students from cheating in AI? You know what? In the real world, guess what you can do? You can look. You can use AI. You can use calculators. You can use computers. You can ask a friend. You can do all kinds of stuff. So the real issue isn't that. The real issue is that you have to understand the intuition behind it, right? So there's ways to solve that. Don't make it cheating. Make it mandatory on projects outside. Document it, show it, and then have ways to assess and have questions they have to show and understand the concept nature of it. It's not impossible to do. That way you get the best of both worlds. You get the efficiencies of learning. You combine that with your technical skills, and that what creates a very dangerous person, somebody that you want to hire, somebody who's not that kid in the back. All right? All right. So, I'm sorry, you might be fantastic. In fact, I don't really know. That's good. All right, good. All right. So, in real estate, a little bit, what's going on? What's the landscape? Well, 92% of occupiers, you know what an occupier is? It's just somebody who owns a business, right? Somebody who's just renting real estate. 92% of them are using AI to figure out how to grow their business better. So that's not a real estate story, that's a business story. That's an economic story. That means that the same number, basically, of people as 96 in real estate, but on the other side of it, your tenant, your client is a business owner that's using AI. They're not just using AI, by the way, to work on their lease and figure out their location. It's trying to figure out how to make their company more efficient. Yes, sir? This was this particular study was actually a trends. It was a global trend survey by JLL Global. So it looked all across the country. And basically, though, and I have to go back to the survey methodology, but JLL has good coverage. They're all across the world. I mean, even in some of the very smallest markets. If you ever wanted to look up, you know, the vacancy rate in any country outside of the U.S., you would go to JLL. All right. So I'm sure it's missing some countries, but nonetheless, it's a pretty comprehensive survey. But nonetheless, so owners, investors, it's 88%, which is close. It's a different survey. The one had 96%, but still high use. 87% are increasing their budgets. And by the way, people are trying to do about 5 things at a time, okay? Now, a couple of them are just really simple, and I'll tell you what they are in a minute. But you can kind of see what they're working on. Where you got most of them piling in them. But what do you notice up there that's interesting? Well, it's the red, right? It's the red. We've got a whole bunch of them working on it. We've got a whole bunch of them spending on it, right? But we don't have a whole bunch of them satisfied with it. Some of them aren't even using it. So what are they really doing for the most part? A lot of them are just spending the money and go, here, now you've got Claude on your machine. Even our university, where we're at, they just got us an enterprise license to Copilot. All right, is there any Copilot training? No, right? So are people using it? I don't know, maybe some, but I bet there's a whole lot of people that aren't. So it's not about the spend. You can spend money, but you got to train people. You got to show them how to use it, and you got to integrate it into your system. So I'll talk about how people are using it in real estate, because if you can't integrate it to your systems, it doesn't really work, okay? So again, lots of piloting, very few people have achieved their goals, but it's early. But you know, again, people are spending a lot of money on this, and they're going to continue to spend more. You know, I'm not going to go through this entire slide, but let me just tell you a couple things that are pretty critical. So, or pretty easy, I should say. It's all critical. But property valuation. Okay. Look at the error rate that you can cut down by using some AI tools in valuing property. That's pretty important, okay? It goes from basically an error rate of 2.8%, which is down from 10 to 15% just 5 years ago. It's better at figuring out the errors of valuation relative to where the transaction price is going to go. Now, I have a research paper, because I still like to do those, but even when I was in industry, by the way, and all this academic stuff that one does, it's the best way you can find a gap in the market. Every business that I built came from knowing a bunch of stuff that was research driven, that showed a need, and then I implemented it, right? So all this stuff leads to entrepreneurship in my view, or at least my experience. But we did a paper where we took all the real estate, single tenant net lease buildings. Anybody know what that is? Single tenant net lease. You guys ever go to a Wendy's? Taco Bell? Yeah? No Taco Bell? You're a negative correlated asset. You'd be good for my portfolio. So a Walgreens, a CVS, been there? All right. So basically that's one tenant. They do a lease basically where the owner doesn't have to do anything except collect rent effectively, right? It's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically what it is. So we basically had all of them across the country. And there's methods that people use, and there's data that actually codes the quality of the building. There's this data set called CoStar, and it gives you like all these building characteristics and all the other things that we'd use. Where's the location? How is it geocoded? What flood zone are you in? What's the rent and vacancy of it? What's the price per square foot of surrounding properties? What's going on with employment? All the stuff that you'd use to forecast it. We did one thing. By the way, I got a slide on it later, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll just flip through that slide. We did one thing. We went to Google Images, took a picture of the properties. Took a while to do it, but not as long because we had an AI tool to scrape it, right? And we had AI build a property quality score, a whole bunch behind it, how we did it, right? But we added it, and it just drastically increased the metric that goes into that quality of the property as it relates to price. Enough for on a $10 million property, we're talking about $100,000, $200,000 worth of value for one thing. If you add it up across a bunch of things, you could talk about $1 million of value. That's 10% of the purchase price that could be different. Now, listen, I gotta go a little faster, but I'm a realist. In the world, just because I have a model that works and shows that I think the property is worth $1 million less, let's say, because it looks ugly for some reason, am I necessarily going to get $1 million less? Okay, so if I don't necessarily get $1 million less, well, what do I get? I get basically what the seller is going to agree to pay, what the market supply and demand is, right, regardless of my beautiful model. Does that mean that that model I built is useless? No, what could it do for me? I have leverage for one thing. More importantly, it does help me in that negotiation, right? And even from a very simple point of view, you can just say, listen, I'm not going to do this property if it's to the other side. Or on the other ways, I can get a little more aggressive on price. You know, this building's in better quality than CoStar looked at. There's been some improvements on it. I'm going to go verify that for myself, but maybe that extra little sliver is actually worth it because this is actually a better building that the market's not giving it credit for. So you're right. That's leverage, it's negotiation, it's information. And you can always use that. Now, on the downside, it just may help you walk away from bad deals. Well, anyway, you can do all kinds of market intelligence. The other thing I would tell you is, if you ever sign a lease for something, your apartment lease is pretty big. A commercial lease is like very big. Well, as a tenant, you need to understand your rights and obligations. As an owner, you might have like a whole bunch of properties. They all have lease bumps or CPI adjustments or changes. Well, you need to make sure you're collecting on that, or there's key terms on that where maybe people have to keep the building in a certain kind of shape. They got to replace the parking lots at a certain period of time. How the heck can you find this in this big document? You can literally just stick it in 10 seconds, do it. It used to take 1,000,000 hours to do that. Now it's nothing, okay? Now it's nothing. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. We'll come back to it. Here's a couple of studies. JLL said, basically on those lease abstracts, you get 3 times the work out of one person. Now, we're going to come back, by the way. Some of that might say, well, that's not good. JLL is going to hire 3 less people. Not necessarily. They were letting billions of dollars go through by not finding that stuff. And I'll come back to, I'm an entrepreneur, okay? And we'll talk about this at the fireside chat. Somebody's always asking me, like, hey, do you want to build this business? You know what the first thing that comes to my mind is? Hey, you know what? Maybe I need a few less people, but I'm actually now can actually start a business without putting as much value at risk as I used to. And now all of a sudden I'm going to hire some people. And that's true for not just me, it's going to be true for you and you and you and you, aggregate, because the barrier to entry might got a little smaller because I can get 2 analysts instead of 10. But if, you know, a bunch of people get it, it creates more and more jobs, more and more opportunities, more and more ways to get more involved. More efficient, smaller companies, but maybe a whole lot more companies with a lot more smart people that can integrate technology and AI and data analytics together. So for me, in my old business, to be able to get to scale, I would have to have about 120 people raising capital for me at a time. Based on the back of the, oh, and by the way, every time I've done that, which has been twice at scale, I've lost $30 million before I made a penny. It's painful to lose that amount of money. It feels bad, okay? I think I can only lose $4 to $5 million and do the same thing at scale right now, okay? It makes me a lot more likely to do it at my age. I don't want to lose that kind of money now. I might not ever be able to make it back. If I make a mistake, you know, this gray stuff is real, okay? All right. CBRE, listen, they got an AI platform. Again, doing a bunch of stuff. They got 1 billion square feet that's AI enabled. One building saved $197,000 just in energy. Take $197,000 and divide it by 0.05. That's how much that one thing did to create value for that particular property. It's huge. Here was a deal I just worked on. This was actually a public grocery anchored center in New Smyrna Beach. Our lawyers went to bed. The diligence period was expiring. I did not have time to get the lawyers on the phone, couldn't get them on the phone. Guess what we got on the phone? We got lawyer Claude on the phone. Drafted the amendment. By the way, when we got done with Claude, we threw it over to chat to make sure Claude wasn't wrong, right? Because we have dueling counsel, because it's actually a really good way to check is having a couple look at it. Did the deal. We got pro formas that are automated for the family office. Like I'm a professor, we do some stuff at the house. We've got pretty much pro formas on autopilot from a first run. Still got to go back and check it because it makes errors. By the way, Claude is lazy like people. You have a pro forma that's supposed to do sensitivity analysis. The first time we built the model, he didn't really do it. They're really good statisticians. It's like Dr. Girgis here. He's the best econometrician ever. Claude found some easy way to estimate sensitivity analysis. Somehow, they're using elasticities. It actually wasn't a sensitivity analysis. So you had to check it with other ways to make sure that it actually worked. But good ways to get around it. Anyway, accounting. You know, listen, accounts receivable, accounts payable, don't have to touch any of that stuff ever anymore, right? Have people watch it, check it on a regular basis, but it's just happening through the systems. All right, there was our study that we already talked about. Again, 10% NOI increase. So again, think about any number you want to from a building that kicks off. Say a building's kicking off $100,000. Have it go up by 10% and multiply, take the 100,000 divided by 0.05, take the 110 and divide it by 0.05. That's the difference that you're getting in valuation by a 10% savings in NOI. That means you're generating more income. And most of the time, that's cost savings, it's efficiencies, that's bringing real value to the market. There's also some stuff with downtime. You can predict with AI when your HVAC is going to break, when your elevator is going to break. You can decide on aggregate pretty much who's going to re-sign their lease and who isn't. Okay? Very interesting things going on in the space that people are using all the time. It's a pretty big budget. You can kind of take a look at those numbers for yourself. You know, they're big numbers. And by the way, it's not just the numbers. It's the ongoing costs, because systems are going to upgrade, the costs are going to be higher, and it's about 20% of the initial investment for ongoing optimization, it appears, based on the data. All right. Reality check. You know, the problem is, well, you know what? I was actually working on a really big model for something. I was actually thinking about that business. And I started to complain. I called my son up. I said, dang it, this Claude isn't where I thought it was. There were so many errors in this model. It's not near as good as you think it is. He said, my father, he talks very formal, I don't know why, but this is actually how he speaks. You know this is true. Yeah. My father, a good carpenter, never blames his tools. I'm like, oh. So the problem is, you know, there's nobody watching the P&L. There's nobody who actually knows AI on site. There's nobody that's making sure the data's clean, the fragmented data is all in the right place. And there's nobody training the people systematically. And then nobody's linking it into the systems. So great, you can spend it, but you're not getting there because you're not doing the things you need to do in order for this thing to be sustainable and work in your business on a daily basis. You got a data quality crisis, same thing. Again, you're not keeping people skilled. Only 33% feel adequately trained. 33%. And again, I go back to one of my PhD students, much young, 25 years younger than me, okay? Literally touched that hot stove, has no idea what's going on with AI, dismisses it as a tool, saying it's hallucinating all the time. He's not prepared, okay? And there's also unrealistic expectations. Listen, when you build a model as it sits today, it's going to get better and better. You build a model today and there's high stakes on it, you better darn well go through it and check those cells, check those links, make sure everything's working, because you can't afford an error. If you're a fiduciary, you're investing money for somebody, you're making important financial decisions, you can't go, because by the way, one of the things it's best at is building you, by the way, look at that slideshow. Anybody know which AI built this? I did this slideshow in AI. Which one? Of course, you can see it on the first slide, it's the same color. My students turn stuff in and they're supposed to document what they do and it comes out with this exact template and you don't write Claude? It's like, anyway, all right. So, you know, listen, there's obviously data breaches, there's cybersecurity changes, there's, you know, over-reliance, there's compliance risk, there's all kinds of things to worry about. But I tell you what, we need to embrace it. The most exciting thing about this, honestly, as an entrepreneur, and I don't think people are talking about it. They just are saying, listen, worry. What am I supposed to worry about? I'm supposed to worry to where I got to go live in a building that's owned by the government, and I don't work, and the robots bring me the cheese, and I go do my thing. No, listen, that's not where we are. You learn, you educate, opportunities are going to come. Every time I think about it, I think about the fact that the most important thing when I think about a new company is, who the heck am I going to hire? Who's the person? I can hire less people, but I need the best people. So now I don't have to get a bunch of average people to go fill my 120 seats. I can get 30 people. I can pay them better. They can be more efficient. It's the whole radiologist paradox that people talked about, right? Well, they're not losing their jobs more and more going. They just have to do more. The ones that ultimately survive do even more that are good. Maybe eventually you see less of them, but not right now. But more and more businesses will be created because people can. There'll be more one-person businesses. You start up a business, your analyst might be you. You sitting with 3 different AIs to get you going to where you need to go. That's okay. It's fine to be self-employed. If you don't like your boss, you have to look in the mirror, fire him. All right? Anyway, some of this stuff is kind of in the weeds. Kind of a timeline. Listen, you know, agentic AI is mainstream right now. We got multi-step stuff going on. There are things that are happening probably next year. We'll probably get rid of, in our little system, we got a little Salesforce thing that keeps track of customers. I don't need to pay Salesforce a whole bunch of money anymore. I can create Salesforce that I need. Now, maybe some giant company can't do it yet, but I can create everything I need myself. So it's interesting to think about. There'll be some full portfolio autonomy with human oversight later. But listen, there's problems. You guys all heard the story of the vending machines that are supposed to run their own business without any human action and all the things that happen there, right? They started yelling at the people and threatening the consumer and the customer. Listen, we got a ways to go, but the life is changing. Embrace it. I can't think of a better spot to sit in than being in data analytics, being at a good school, being a person who chose to come and do extra work, right? Getting a chance to be in Manhattan. By the way, get each other's business card. You have no idea who's sitting in the room here, who's going to be the next whatever. I don't know what the next thing is, what the next investment's going to be, but there's some cool stuff. Space economy excites me. You know what stuff's going on there? You know, everybody talks about data centers and all the problems with power. You know where you can make power cheap? Up there. And you used to worry about moving the power down here. You don't have to. Do the computations up there, throw the answers back here. Who might be good at that? Probably people sitting in this room. Lots of opportunities, lots of excitement. There's some key takeaways. I'm delighted to sit and have a little fireside chat and open it up with you guys. Listen, I'm not an AI expert, but I wake up every day, I'm using it, I'm implementing it, and I'm excited because if I want to, I still got a little juice in this gray hair tank. I may run another business, and I'm gonna grab a couple of you guys instead of 10 that I needed before, but I'm gonna pick the best ones, maybe even you. We'll think about it. Maybe. And we'll run with it. All right? So with that said, we'll just head to the fireside chat. Thank you. It's warm in here. Is this Florida?
You brought the heat with you.
You know?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Randy. I have a very challenging question for you.
Yeah.
How many calories did you burn going back and forth?
I don't know. I don't think I burned any because I didn't have my iPhone on with me, and if it doesn't show up on my steps, it didn't actually happen. So, I guess none.
So, you mentioned that maybe around 92% of the firms are piloting AI, and only 5% achieve meaningful outcome. What are the main determinants of success here? Is the investment, the practice, the training, if you'd like to rank 2 or 3 of them?
This microphone back on? Yep. So it's a little bit what I talked about before, right? You could spend money, but unless you're spending it in the right way, you have to do the training, you have to get the data right, you have to have depending on the size of the organization, you have to have some people that actually really know AI. Not a me, right? I'm an investor. I'm a capital raiser. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not an AI expert. I go set up a next business, believe me, I'm gonna have some AI true experts sitting there automating, building those processes, and understanding the data, the nature of that data, and make sure that that's clean. I mean, listen, you can spend, but if people don't know how to use it, you got bad data, nothing's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. You'll get bad outcomes, and the bad outcomes gives you back to the hot stove. You think, oh, it's still not working. Right? It gives a funny feedback loop, I think. Yeah?
You mentioned that AI can write the whole contract in 1 hour. So here's my question. How close are we to AI meaningful participating in negotiation, valuation, and real-time decision-making? And what is the role of the humans in this case, and how it's going to impact the employment rate? I understand that you're 10, you will be hiring 3. What will happen to the remaining 7? Do you think we'll be able to generate enough jobs to absorb the difference between 10 and 3?
Well, let's start with the first part of our negotiations. Has anybody negotiated anything lately? Yeah? What?
My paycheck?
How'd it go?
Good.
And what did you do? I'm being serious. Stand up for a second. All right. So what did you do in order to have a good outcome there?
I really looked and took time to really, not all of us, but I took some time to really, analyze exactly who I'm talking to, look at what the business potentially needs. So when I walk into the actual room, I can provide them with a plan and explain why I might be worth more than what they say.
Exactly right. Did you use any AI to do it?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not.
Okay.
I like to get my hands dirty just a little bit, just a little bit. I know how to use it, but.
Okay. So I will tell you that I can't really go into it, but I'm looking at a potential deal. It's a significant thing that I want to buy, and I happened to be coming to New York for this event, and it was an easy time to meet with some of the people involved in the transaction, and I want to be very strategic in that meeting. So I actually did use AI a lot. Now, let me tell you, first of all, why I want the deal, though. I didn't want the deal that had anything to do with AI. I like this company because I knew the people. I know the market positioning and moat around the people. I know that it's a business that it's not standing in the middle of the road, meaning that it has the components to where parts of it actually are helped by AI and parts of it are orthogonal to AI. And to me, it's quite a fascinating business. That's why I really wanted it. It was positioned well, but it's really the people and the marketing position of that firm. So it wasn't that I was going in there trying to, I don't know, really knock the price down exactly, but I wanted to go in there, build the relationship. I wanted to show that I knew the business the best because a lot of people are trying to bid for it. So I did a lot of work, a lot of AI work, try to really understand that business like you did to try to negotiate your salary. To come up with the questions, to show that I understood it, understood their value proposition. And then also, you also have to know what the other person on the side of the desk wants to know my value proposition. And so I couldn't have Copilot draft up my value proposition and his value proposition and then go meet and have our nice dinner and talk for 3.5 hours to get there. So it helped me think through a structured conversation, but then conversations go everywhere. But I had a chance to work my points through to make sure I understood and cared about the position, which I do, but make sure that the conversation went well. I tell you what, though, I'm not going to close it without human diligence. I'm not going to close it without meeting all the people, shaking hands with all the people, breaking bread with them, getting a chance to spend even more time with them to make sure it's a good fit. When we used to hire people, we did all kinds of stuff, because I made a couple hiring decisions that weren't good at first. By the way, people are the hardest part of a business. It's really hard to get that right. So we got to where a big part of it was, first, we want to make sure they had the technical expertise. You guys had passed that with flying colors. So we give everybody an Excel worksheet and say, hey, you got X amount of time to give it. It was really hard. We didn't have a single person ever finish it and get it right. But there was a couple things we're looking for. How right did you get it? What was your logic? And did you come back and ask for more time? Go, hey, I'm turning it in now, but I'd like to show you that I could complete it. I'm going to turn it in the next day if you let me work. And we had some people that work on it through the night, and we get it at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was perfect by then. That's a pretty good hire. Now, does that get you the job, though? No. So everybody at our firm, down to the lowest paid person in the firm, because every person is important in a system, had full veto power. Now, it doesn't mean that people had the ability to screen the pool and pick them and say yes. But if the person treated the person wrong, they had uncomfortable feelings about the person didn't look them in the eye and speak to them, shake their hand, treat them with respect, any single person could veto them. Because I will tell you, in the labor market, even long before this AI thing started, people, deals, opportunities, investments. Imagine a giant train running down the road. There's another one coming. What is going to make them stop and say yes to your raise? What is going to make them stop and say, listen, I'd be a good partner on this deal I'm trying to put together? And that's the value prop you have to put together. So taking that human element out, I think that's tough. Are we going to lose some jobs? In some areas. I mean, if your job is to be the person who put all the LOIs out and put the sales contracts together, your job is one of those jobs that are going away relatively soon. There's a lot of jobs in the legal profession that are going away soon, but there's more jobs getting created. Exactly what those jobs are going to be is not fully determined, but I will tell you that I believe that, again, there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurship, a lot more business growth, a lot more development, because with efficiency, gains excess returns. With excess returns gains opportunity because people want to invest, they want to grow. I ultimately think, by the way, and I mean this, I'm going to say it a couple different ways. In a non-AI world, I would tell you getting one good deal is worth a lifetime of labor. If you could find one good real estate deal to do, you could work your whole life in middle management and have a 401k and maximize it out. You just do one good deal, you'll have more money than you possibly ever would have by working your whole life. You buy a business, you use other people's money, you'll leverage it, the business goes good. It's really the same thing. In this new AI world, there's going to be a bigger return on capital and a lower return on labor over the time. Okay? Mm-hmm. So entrepreneurship, I think, will be part of the way.
Thank you. Well,
I actually have a question for you, sir. So I know you kind of touched about AI over-reliance, but just coming from a student perspective, I know for a fact, I've been personally trying to automate stuff, especially in my job hunt this year because I'm actually a graduating senior. But basically, a lot of companies nowadays, like kind of what you said, like how teachers were like, oh yeah, if you use AI and cheating. A lot of companies nowadays, specifically JP Morgan, they were that out on that. But basically, they will put like different things in like white text or different things like in small text and stuff like that, just to make sure you can't actually go ahead and fully automate the process. Would you have any tips or anything like that, or would you say that's something where you has to step in?
So there are reasons that different firms do different things. And so if you're managing other people's money, I don't know the context. I understand what you're talking about. In fact, there are things that people do on the academic side to make sure that people haven't used too much AI on the research process to authenticate it, and same with like how reviewers look at it. So that's happening everywhere. On the investment management side, the problem is that you have laws and regs that you're acting as a fiduciary in somebody's best interest, and we're not to the point to where you can fully rely on AI to be able to make investment decisions for somebody else. Think about the liability of giant multi-billion-dollar transactions that are coming through that look nice, that seem nice, that look great. Everything's perfect. And by the way, one of the things AI is great at is giving you something that makes you feel really confident, and it comes back and it's wrong. You can't do it. In fact, you could blow a bunch of securities violations in different cases. So you have to put gates and things around it to prevent that in many cases. So while you may want to automate things, there are things that you can't automate because we're not there yet. That'll evolve and change, and laws and rules will change, but as we sit here today, that's probably likely why you're seeing it. And so it's probably not a bad thing that they're doing. They're probably literally doing it because they're required to. No, I just say it's probably part of the business and part of the way that they play. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good question. Yes?
So, Randy, as an educator and businessman, we already experienced significant changes in the technology and that require skills. Mm-hmm. So, as an educator, let's start with this. What kind of skills do you think our students should have before they graduate?
You do really need to understand what you're doing. When I was building my models on my business, you have to be able to prompt. And be able to prompt right means you have to actually understand things, right? You actually need to know the key variables. You actually have to understand what it is that you're doing. So I think those are super important. You've got to have all the intuition. I think you still need a lot of quantitative tools, maybe different quantitative tools than you used to, but you still need them, and you need to be able to understand them. By the way, when I used to work on papers with you, I didn't have your level of quantitative skills. I never will. But I knew enough to understand what we needed to do, what it would look like, and when it came back to have suggestions and to be able to interact with you. The same with AI. You need to be able to understand what it's doing, why it's doing it, and if it's reasonable at all. But I will also tell you, and this has been true long before AI, the soft skills and the creative thought are also equally important. You got to learn how to build relationships. You got to learn how to connect with people. You have to understand what they need, what they're looking for, what the value proposition, how to help them grow their business. One of the things that people never got in the asset management business, everybody believes that. So, I was pretty proud of my returns. We had the best in the fund that I ran in my category, the best 1, 3, 5, 10 since inception returns when I sold the fund. So I was proud of that. And that was part of the reason that we did well. But the real reason that we did well was we helped the person that was helping us raise capital build their business. Because if I did a 9% return and the competitor did a 9.25% return, but I was helpful, I was responsive, and helped them grow their business, I still may get that business. Those soft skills really matter. I was telling you about this. So my son's in a quantitative PhD program, and You know what class he said he helped him the most to get his research ideas from? It wasn't his math class, took a lot of them. It wasn't his stat class, it was actually his philosophy classes. It's the logic, it's the thought, it's the connection, it's the perspective. So a combination of really strong quant skills with a little bit of razzle-dazzle and personality, we're all selling something. Even if your job is completely quantitative, you don't have any direct reports, you're selling something. It's your output, it's your technical capability, it's your ability to grow, it's your ability to move and create value for that company. It's the ability to make them trust you because you are doing the right thing, that you have the skills and you're implementing them correctly. That's going to make you a lot more money than being 10% better on the quant side. So it's a little bit of both. But don't, you still need the other. We still give, to this day, Excel exams. We still give questions that are kind of hard to solve to make sure that the firepower is up there as well.
You stated that companies are spending significant amount of money to improve the efficiency of AI. But here's the issue. How should they balance speed with risk related to safety and ethics?
I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story. Not that embarrassing. You can keep the cameras on. Afterwards, maybe I'll tell some other ones. It's not so good. But
During the dinner.
what's that?
During the dinner.
Yeah, during the dinner, maybe. I don't know. So there's a boutique investment bank. It's a bank you've never heard of. It's not a JP Morgan type bank. It's just a little one, but maybe 10 people though. It's actually in New Jersey. But the guy who runs it kind of has a monopoly in this little space in which I live because he's been doing it for 40 years. It's an amazing little company, amazing little business. And I was just trying to think about something. And they have a team of analysts and smart machines and things. And I wanted to sort of get a gut check on something, and I told him I was going to send him something, and I ran out of time. I was grading papers. I was actually in my kayak too much. I watched too much Netflix. There's a couple cool shows on. I can give you some recommendations afterwards. But I really wanted to get it to him, so I did a really quick. I had all the AI, right? I've got all that you can have. I have it all. But I did a really quick one. It looked great. It kind of felt right intuitively because I got fairly good intuition. And I sent it over, and the reply back was, hey, this is nowhere near what we're expecting. We can't work with that. And this is somebody who's pretty important to me in the marketplace. That reputation was that, hey, this is a really smart guy. This is a guy that understands the market, that gives good product. He sends me people, go, here's somebody you need to talk to. Here's somebody to partner with. And I sent him a pile of garbage. I will never do that again. And so I think you can go fast, you can use it or rely on it, you can wait till the last minute, and then all of a sudden you have something. I mean, at my age, I still don't want to, I don't need another job, but I do want the option to have people think maybe that I know what I'm doing, that I can be useful and helpful and build something else if I want to. So I think a lot of firms are doing it. They feel comfortable, they move too fast, and they get it done. You know, we had a real estate conference, and one of the guy we had moderating, really good real estate person, also owns a bunch of restaurants and a VC company and really kind of moving and shaking in the area. And he made a comment. I thought about going a little deeper, but we were running late. And the comment was, if it took somebody a day to do something really good and somebody could give me something in 10 minutes, as a business owner, I want it in 10 minutes. The follow-up question is, yeah, of course, but was that 10-minute thing any good? I mean, so you got to balance speed with some fact-checking quality controls as well. And how many people here maybe have waited till the last minute on a project because you might could throw it in there and get something done? Listen, this is happening in PhD programs. Like literally at certain years, you've got to like say that you got a research in process and they don't have any ideas. And like 3 days out, they're like throwing something into the machine, kicking out something that looks kind of like a paper. And by the way, smart people know how to adjust it. You can actually tell AI to not look like AI. You can actually use different ways to, and Grammarly and other things to make it zero detectable without too much work. And the next thing you know, it looks like it was a piece of paper, but it really wasn't nothing but a piece of paper. And so that's happening a lot as well. I'm seeing it everywhere.
I'm I'm sure we are all enjoying the fireside chat, but to make sure that we don't fall behind the schedule, do you want to ask one final question?
Yes, there's one final question I have. So, thanks. So, when it comes to risk management, one of the most challenging tasks is to find the turning point when the economy starts its own recession. And we have a large number of leading indicators that can help. How successful do you think AI will be able to predict this turning point when it comes to macro data or real estate?
I think it's going to substantially improve it. We're already okay at it, but there's a glitch that I'll come back to. But by the way, I didn't read it. I did it real quick on the way over here in the car, but I made a little post about a little bit about this. Is that all people do on LinkedIn that say they're smart people and trying to talk about investments is they tell you that it's raining when it's already raining. It's like, sure. Oh, hey, it's warm out. Great, right? This is about predicting the future, right? That's what's interesting. If you have the ability to say, listen, I know there's a bunch of things that are broken, but for everything that's broken, that means there's one more thing that you can create where there's an opportunity. So literally it's like, hey man, I don't need to know that I need an umbrella if it's raining. I'm already going to grab my umbrella, right? So tell me what I can do. So you told me there's problems with private credit. Anybody who follows finance, you probably will see every article is about private credit, private credit, private credit, private credit, private credit. It's bad. Well, it's not all bad. And by the way, guess what? There's a huge opportunity because there's problems there, okay? So it's seeing the future is important. So understanding those turning points are important. So right now, listen, Haney, we built some stuff in some companies where you consulted with that gave some early warning indicators. Part of that sale for Marcus and Millichap or some of the stuff we worked on consulting. So there's a lot of data, but with AI, we can make those models better, quicker, and find some other ways to find those turning points better, to find the asymmetry. I don't think you can ever predict a full downturn or a full upturn, but at least you can find better where the risk is more asymmetric to the upside, and to the downside, then you have to invest accordingly. You're never going to get it right. Part of the reason too is you can't predict something like a leader of a country decides to do X. A leader of another country decides to do Y. Somebody in the oil monopoly decides to all of a sudden put out more barrels. There's always these exogenous shocks that happen that no model can pick up because it's outside the cost of data. It'll be better, but we'll never fully be there as well. There's always going to be uncertainty in the world, and uncertainty is not a bad thing. Without uncertainty, there's no risk premium. Without no risk premium, there's no reward. Huh?
Thanks, Andy, for a very engaged discussion.
Thanks.
And
thank you, Haney.
thank you.
Dr. Anderson, you liked our logo, so we're giving you a T-shirt with the logo of the competition
I'll take it.
and a picnic blanket, so you can enjoy in Florida.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on right now in the camera.
Yeah. Thanks again for a wonderful and engaging keynote talk and a fireside chat. So just quickly before we head downstairs to the poster session, a couple of quick reminders, and let me go over the rules of phase one. During phase one, we had to separate the rooms. We had to separate the teams into 3 rooms. You're not really competing with the other teams in your room, so this was done randomly. But it's just because we don't want each advisor to evaluate 20 posters. So each advisor will only evaluate 6 or 7. We're giving folders to the advisors, so please on your way back, stop by the front desk. The advisors, we're going to give you a folder, and the folder will give you a checklist of the teams that you're going to evaluate. So this is just for the teams, for the students to see, where they stand. So for example, let's say Lehigh University, you're poster number A3. So there are 7 teams or 7 posters in your group. So you have to be visited by 7 faculty advisors. And there's 7, 6, and 7. What else should I tell you? Then a couple of reminders for the student teams. Please do not use handouts. Please do not use laptops. It's a poster session, so supposedly you're just explaining your findings to the judges. And what else? Your presentation is already being, this session was live streamed, and the presentation session will also be live streamed. For the faculty advisors, other than what I told you, ideally, we want you to spend no more than 10 minutes on each poster, plus like 2 minutes on to enter the scores on the paper forms that you can find in those folders. Usually there's a learning curve. At first, you'll find yourself spending more time on the first couple of posters, and then you might not need as much time. So we'll give you, there will be announcements which will guide you to the next poster, but please do not spend like too much time on one poster. And then the last thing, make sure you complete the folder to the student workers before you leave. Because if you evaluate some teams and don't do some others, then it's going to be very difficult, almost impossible to use the scores. So that's what I had as in terms of rules. Any questions for me before we head downstairs? So it's 5:10. Let's start phase 2 in 5:20. So there will be coffee downstairs on the 4th floor. That was promised to me. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes on the 4th floor. Thank you.
change it back to the Go stream. And then
Perfect.
And then the audio as well. We don't.
I have the mics. I can't hear you, RJ. All right, I need an empty station, so I'm gonna hunt for one. Well, shoot. All right, I'm gonna just have to hunt. Are you guys open? Okay, all right. We're gonna live stream this, so 2 mics. Don't talk over each other. Here, we'll start. You know, you can pass me just and just wait. Testing.
This is for live streaming purposes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're ready. And then you can start. 3-minute pitch. All right, 3-minute pitch. 3-minute pitch.
Okay.
3-minute pitch.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Augusta,
My name is Dylan.
And my name is Ryan.
and today we'll be going over finding the signal and automobile recall risk. So here we've been able to use a breakpoint and event study approach in order to build our investment portfolio of a long-short strategy. And here we're able to do that through our firm sensitivity and surprise metric combined that builds our signal versus noise market interpretation model. Here we've been able to generate over $6 million in and out of sample and contribute to our profitability for Riverdale investments. So just to go over a big question, do automobile recalls move stock prices and when do they matter? And the short answer is yes. And our goal here is to find out which recalls matter, when they matter, and how investors can act upon that information.
So essentially, we were given the same data set as every other competition and every other competitor in this group. We were given 30,000 rows of data, which we were able to narrow down to about 5,400 given the market observations. We used a text-based severity scoring model as well as a natural language processing model for root cause classification, as well as a breakpoint analysis and an event study. So essentially here you can see our breakpoint event. You can see our breakpoint model, which measures the structural shifts in recalls, which essentially we were able to find 2 statistically significant breakpoints at 2014 and 2020, both of which coinciding with major industry changes. We then moved on to our natural language processing model, which allowed us to find the root cause classification for each individual recall in the data set, separating between, let's say, the difference between a burnt bulb causing a recall and a sensor malfunction causing a recall. We're then also able to create a severity scoring model based off of insurance rates and found component exposure to be about equal across most companies aside from Ford and most notably Tesla. I'll pass it now back to Augusta.
Thank you. So what we originally thought, the worse the recall, the worse the return based on the factors that he had mentioned above, severity, component, and frequency. But the data tells us differently. This is why we have built our signal versus noise market interpretation model. Here we use an event study. It's an industry time-tested methodology with a benchmark of the S&P 500. You can think of an event study as tracking sales at a coffee shop. And one day a celebrity posts about it, and the next day you see the sales jump. So that difference of the increase in sales and what a coffee shop would normally do will tell you the true difference of what brought in customers that day. The same thing goes for stocks. You're measuring a stock's actual return based off the recall announcement date, and comparing that to the expected return like the benchmark of the S&P 500. And that difference is called the abnormal return, and that will tell us what actually gave us market moving signals. So here we have 3 market reactions by era. We have a positive signal where you get a positive cumulative abnormal return, and that is seen as recalls doing proactive management. And secondly, we have a negative signal where you get a negative cumulative abnormal return, and this is viewed as recalls that raises concerns about cost, operations, and quality. And lastly, you have where the risk is already priced at 0% returns, and there was no reaction in the market. So here, our first layer of our model is our firm sensitivity model. We built this because not every firm reacts to recalls equally, so based off our market reactions by era. So what we found in our tech EV era, like Dylan said before, in our breakpoint analysis, we see that in Ford and Tesla, they both have positive signals that is known to be a more legacy brand driven in the US, and Tesla to be more tech-heavy tech-heavy brand known for their EVs. And secondly, we have Honda and BMW. Honda is known to be a reliable mass-market car brand, and BMW to be that premium brand. And lastly, we have Toyota as a dummy variable in order to show the signal in those other firms. And this way, we're able to grasp the whole automobile industry where we found the most amount of signals. So our second part of our layer of our model is building our surprise metric, and that measures how unexpected a recall is relative to a firm's history. And that is calculated through the actual risk, which is from our severity score, and potentially affected with the firm's historical recall history. And from this, we were able to tier that into 3 different buckets of surprise. So low surprise, medium surprise, and high surprise. And what we found is that when you combine both in the interaction effect, we see the returns the day after the recall the strongest and with the most significance. So you can see when you combine a negative sensitive firm with a positive with a high surprise, you get a negative 0.62% CAR, and when you combine a positive sensitive firm with a low surprise, you get a 0.47% return. And what you see here is that when you combine both, you get the most amount of signal. And this way, with our model, what I want you to take away is how much we're able to filter out that noise and make strong, profitable investment decisions based on our signal only. And now I can pass it off to Ryan.
Okay, so after differentiating that signal, how can we use that and the newly created interaction effect to our advantage? So for our investment strategy, we did a cohesive 2-part event study. This event study lasts a -1 plus 7 day window. -1 is 1 day before the recall announcement, and +7 is 7 days after that recall announcement. With this, we use 3 major factors. The first major factor, if we go back to our breakpoint analysis, is we only use post-2014 data. Anything pre-2014 we disregarded, and everything post-2014 in our post-crisis tech EVR is what we used. Next, the next 2 factors we used is the firm sensitivity model and the surprise metric. How can we use that in the newly created interaction effect for our investment strategies? So for our first one, the first part of the event, the study, is we use the interaction effect of negative sensitive and high surprise. These negative sensitive companies, some examples are Honda, BMW. They're considered reliable, or in BMW's case, a premium brand. So when a recall announcement comes out, since they have a low frequency of these, investors panic. They're like, why is BMW, why is a premium brand dropping a recall announcement? So they panic, and we expect the stock price to go down. Now you combine that with a high surprise. It was very out of nowhere, not expected. You combine those 2 interaction effects, and we could see, as you can see here, the stock price actually goes down. So how can we take advantage of that? What we do is we invest a short. On day 0, what we want to do is invest in a short. So we're going to borrow the stock and then sell it at that current price. After that time, on day 7, when the stock price is at its lowest, that's when we're going to buy it back. That's when we can get our advantage. For our next one, we're going to do the opposite reaction effect. This is going to be a positive sensitive, low surprise. So for the positive sensitive, some companies are Ford, Tesla. These are some companies that have a high frequency of recalls over this time period. Now, when a recall announcement comes out for some of these companies, investors are used to it, so they don't think much of it. Now, you combine that with the low surprise, once again, not very expected. It was very expected, and investors knew about it. So what they actually do is they expect the price to go up. So as you can see here, the price actually goes up during that time. So on day 0, once again, we invest and do a long this time, and after the price hits its peak on day 7, that's when we're going to sell it back. Now I'm going to pass it back to Dylan.
So essentially, our investment edge, it comes from the fact that the market does not price all recalls equally, and how we can separate the signals from the noise. So we ran a portfolio simulation across the post-2014 data set, and we found a $5.93 million profit cumulative P&L across both the long and the short strategy. Essentially, this culminated in a 54% combined win rate overall over the 790 trades we tested. Now, bringing this out of sample to just Q1 of this year, we have found $379,000 of realized P&L with a 72% win rate across just the first 3 months of this year. Essentially, to answer the question, do automobiles move stock prices and when do they matter? Yes, they do. They matter, however, through looking at individual firms, the firm sensitivity model, and their interaction with surprise metric in the interaction effect. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Let me grab these for you.
Okay, so you have 2 microphones. You can pass them and share them with each other.
Okay.
You've got about 3 minutes to give your pitch.
3 minutes.
Well, just speed through it. I can't tell you the official amount of time I'll give you, but try to speed through it. Introduce yourselves and your school beforehand.
Okay. All right.
Great.
We'll let you know. All right, and they get in nice close together. All right, great. Y'all friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're good to go. Ready?
Great. Hello, my name is Hector, and we're team team from Tecnológico Monterrey in Mexico.
Hi, my name is Isabela Vasquez.
And let us run you through our poster. So, just as a key findings, we have over 6,000 personal vehicle recalls, a 55% year-over-year spike in a single year. And in 2025, the highest recall concentration we've seen since 2000. So what we found is a new era of exposure. Recalls went from over 100 in 2009 to over 400 in 2025. That's 4 times over. But this doesn't necessarily mean it's worse cars. It's just more complex cars, tighter regulations as well, and deeper software integration. So once we know who is recalled the most and what is going on, the next logical question is, what is happening?
And here's where the defect myth becomes important. We can see that electrical systems account for 22% of all recalls, nearly double any other category. These issues are concentrated in interconnect systems that are higher to isolate. But this is not everything. We also need to see how large their impact can be. Toyota averaged almost 200,000 vehicles per recall. With shared software, one bug can affect an entire model line at once. And this explains the bigger industry shift. In 2000, 65% of recalls were mechanical. By 2025, 64% were tech-related. The industry flipped, driven by ADAS, electrification, and software complexity. So the next step is understanding where those failures follow specific brand patterns.
And that's where counting cases alone can be misleading. A brand may have many recalls, but that does not automatically mean it has the highest severity exposure. Using a chi-square test, we found that defect types are not randomly distributed across brands. For example, Toyota had the strongest association with a standardized residual of 7.5 in wheels and tires, a clear overrepresentation. But the label of the defect does not tell the whole story. What matters is the consequence behind this. To measure this, we built a hybrid NLP-based severity score. Using rule-based keywords with semantic analysis. So it captures both keywords and context, allowing us to separate routine recalls from critical ones. We used the components involved, the NLP signals and advisory flags. By 2025, 3 out of 4 recalls were classified as severe. And after filtering to manufacturers with more than 20 recalls, Bentley stood out, mainly because of fire-related issues, showing that lower volume can still mean higher severity exposure. After defining severity, we wanted to connect it to the financial world, so we matched events to stock data, reaching a 97% of stock coverage for our event study.
Now, to measure market reaction, we use CAR, which is cumulative abnormal return, to understand how exposed we are in the market. So, first, we had to understand and match this to each manufacturer's stock against the S&P 500 to isolate the abnormal movement linked to each event. We calculated this across 4,000 events matched from Yahoo Finance. The result was not bigger recalls equals bigger stock drops. Instead, we found that severity has a weak but visible relationship with market reaction, while the size and also tech versus mechanical defects did not create a significant difference. The brands who were most penalized by the market were, in first place, we had Volvo, then followed by Porsche and Fiat Chrysler. So instead of trying to predict car precisely, we turned our analysis into a score risk exposure model. The score is built by 30% the NLP severity score, next the financial exposure normalized by Bloomberg sales data, and third it was the historical car. But any brand above 5% do not drive advisories, it's automatically set as a high exposure brand. So finally, we built an user-friendly interface where users can play with different investment scenarios, score test brands, and also explore 25 years of financial and recall investment decisions, no? So they can make a better portfolio investment. So yeah, if you want to know your exposure and your investment portfolio, you can scan this QR to find out what's going on. So this is Isa, I'm sorry, and myself, Maria, and that's how we move from defects to dollars. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Oh, no, yeah.
You guys are good to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Cassie.
My name is Joe.
My name is Hamna. And we're from the University of Illinois presenting our analysis on personal vehicle brands and their recalls between the years 2000 and 2025. So we opened by discussing our popular personal vehicle brands. So we chose to look at only popular brands in terms of our analysis. And so this tree map shows all of the different popular brands that are included and their recalls in their relativity. We also looked at recall frequencies and recall types. We also looked at recall tendencies considering technology and manufacturing as some different defect categories. And then we looked at whether particular manufacturers are associated with one particular defect, as well as the severity of recalls and their financial implications.
Oh, wait, no, that's right. So, in terms of recall frequency and recall types, we saw a trend of higher numbers after 2013, with the highest numbers being 2024 and 2025. And then when we looked at vehicle recalls and equipment recalls, as those were the only recalls we found in the popular personal brands after filtering, we saw that vehicles had a lot more than equipment, with equipment having a more of a consistent trend across years, with vehicles rising sharply more after 2012.
In the end, we wanted to look if the recall frequency had an effect on stock prices, because we're investors, and in the end we want to see if the stock prices is getting affected. So we did our analysis and found that there was no statistically significant relationship between our stock prices and the recall frequency.
Feels good?
Yeah.
Great, awesome. Thank you, I'll take this.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Keep it quick, okay?
Oh, we'll be quick, don't worry.
All right, Cyan, we're ready to go.
Are we good? All right, so the three big insights that we found with our data was that there are structural changes, and they were due to regulatory changes and the technology malfunctions with the advancement of technology. We have a long-term impact on stocks is not there, so you basically should, we recommend that your portfolio decisions should be based on long-term and not the short-term. The Ford is our most mentioned manufacturer. Our assumptions were that if the brand was mentioned in the recall description, that they should be included in the data set, and that we found that largest manufacturers aren't necessarily the ones that have the most recalls, whereas Toyota and Honda are outside the top 5.
And then moving on to that last one, we have annual auto recalls. So there were 3 major events that seemed to impact recall activity during that time. The first is the TREAD Act, which was passed in 2000, and then the Takata airbag crisis beginning in 2008, and the FAST Act passed in 2015.
We ran a REMA X model to determine the cyclical effects of the data. We found that there was no association with the cyclical data to the changes in the data for the recalls by a month. And then we ran a bipartisan test to determine the structural breaks. We found one in 2008, one in 2014, and then one in 2020-21.
And then looking at component recall tendencies, it's the annual auto recalls, but now split up by component type. There were 3 major components that seemed to spike above the others. The first is airbags, which was in after 2014, and was a result of the Takata airbag crisis, which began in 2008, but we see that spike later on as other manufacturers begin to realize the extent of the crisis.
as well as electrical systems and backover prevention a little bit later on, which just reflects that shift towards growing reliance on technology and more technological-driven defects.
To look at the association between manufacturer recalled and components that are recalled, we did a correspondence analysis. And so what basically this is showing is the association between the two. So if there's 2 points, and if you can see here, this is Porsche, manufacturer, and this is suspension component. The closeness of those two means that Porsche, percentage-wise, has more suspension recalls in comparison to the whole population.
So we did a recalls by severity. We rated it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then we broke the severity tiers down into critical, high, and moderate, and low. That is 8 to 10, and we found that the criticals spiked in the FAST Act with the Takata airbag crisis, but the high severity tier is still increasing. And then we did it the same thing, but we did financial implications to see the changes compared to the S&P 500. We found that critical actually shows that 2 months prior and when the recall is released that it affects it compared to the market average. But after 3 months and 6 months, that's not necessarily the case.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Hi, my name is Dwani Jain, and I am a junior at LMU.
I'm Quinn Medak. I'm also a junior at LMU.
I'm Stella Conroy, and I'm also a junior.
I'm Brandon Dong. I'm also a junior from LMU.
And today we are looking at NHTSA's automotive recall data over the last 25 years. And we're analyzing whether automotive recalls are a good signal for portfolio managers to know when to get out. And the short answer is yes, if the recall was classified as critical and if you can move within a week, because by day 60, your $1 million position will lose $16,000, and by day 120, there is no signal for recovery.
So to look at this trend a little bit further, we noticed that there was a rise in recalls from the early 2000s period until the last 5 years, from 2020 to 2025. We wanted to look at what's driving this specifically. So this middle bar chart here, this proportional bar chart, shows by component group which components were the ones malfunctioning and causing these recalls. This is grouped into 5-year periods, and what we noticed is that the software category is experiencing a growth in recalls. And then secondly, we grouped the manufacturers by each of these component categories, and within that looked at what their severity is by ranking each one with a severity score. We did this by utilizing NHTSA's abbreviated injury scale, and eventually we created a ranking for each one of these OEMs from 0 to 100 of how severe their risk is.
Yeah, and then so the next part of our study was testing whether the severity of a recall correlates with the movement of a stock. And so what we did to test this is we did an event study. And so the event study looks at irregular returns of a stock over a 6-day period, 3 days before the recall and 3 days after the recall. And to benchmark this irregular return, we used the company's beta, which is the variance of that specific stock's return over the covariance of the S&P 500 returns. And so beta tells us how much a stock typically moves on the market. We got beta over a period of 3 years. That gives us recency as well as an average, well-rounded out number for beta. And so what the study told us was that only severe recalls have a significant negative correlation in irregular returns after a recall.
Which then moves us into the $1 million position loss. If you were to put a $1 million position onto a company that just released a critical recall, in the first 10 days it is losing $3,000, and in the first 60 it is losing $16,000. After 120 days, it's losing $35,000 on that $1 million position, and it isn't projected to fix itself for a long time. And this really affects when companies should pull out, specifically looking at keeping an eye on GM, Ford, Hyundai, and Volkswagen. And if a critical recall comes out, pulling out in the first week is our best recommendation on how to stay even and stay level. Thank you.
Great work, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, well done.
Hello
everyone. We are from UMass Amherst. We are Team 1, and today we'll just be going over our auto recall analysis about where should the investor should be putting their money in terms of recalls and which company. So starting off, we are going to go with the data preparation and the methodology. The first is we filtered our 29,663 recalls down to 7,345 in accordance with personal vehicles like cars, SUV, minivans, and light trucks. Moving forward, we standardized manufacturer names and mapped customers' components into 17 categories. Cutting the other person, which were not really giving or attributing to the data. Then we assigned high, medium, and low severity levels to all of our component categories. Then we also labeled spot checked our random sample for accuracy, just in case to see if we have still the accurate data. Moving forward, we have the overall recalls information. As you can see over here, we have from 2000 and 2009, we had a decline in number of recalls, but moving forward, there was a rising phase in number of recalls from 2010 to 2025. And then just going by the component category, we see that we have the highest number of recalls in the sector or the component category of electrical systems and airbags, and the second, there are other like power trails, fuel systems, and other things. Moving on to the recall severity trends.
Yeah, and going into the recall severity trends, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing on high severity recalls, just knowing that the market impact will react more to fires or crashes or things that will cause life-threatening issues or like liability exposure and regulatory risk. So in going into recall severity trends, we noticed that it was stable until 2011, and then 2012 you see a spike, and then especially since 2014 you see it really starts to steadily increase, and that doesn't seem to be changing. A lot of that's caused through the electrical fuel, airbag, and engine failures. And you see here the two most common high severity recalls you see, accounting for 40%, are powertrain and fuel system. And then going into this final trend, you see an interesting trend here with the electrical system, only accounting for 5.5% of the total breakdown of the history since 2000. You see in the last 5 years it's really having a bump, so we definitely would advise investors to focus in on the electrical system moving forward.
Okay, so moving on, we analyzed top 5 manufacturer by recall record counts, which is BMW, Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors and Mercedes-Benz, and all of them exceed 60% high severity share, where BMW carries the highest at 79%, which consists mostly of electrical system, airbags, and fuel system, and followed by Ford and Chrysler at 72, and Mercedes-Benz is like lowest at 62. And next we use K-means clustering, and using elbow method, we choose four number of cluster as 4, and we can see that that from cluster 4, which is like the most critical system failure, is consists of mostly electrical and fuel system.
So the last column we are doing about financial impact study, and we use Ford as an elected subject because it's second highest records in our data sets, which probably a sufficient number to be analysis. And you can see on the chart, we are doing the study about the cumulative normal returns using the 10-day prior and 10-day after days windows. As you can see that the Takata airbag crisis, the power losses crisis, and the rear review camera crisis are positives, while the roll away transitions and the brake mega recalls has a negative abnormal returns. And this is because the investor typically prioritize the financial crisis instead of the number of recalls. And also we have some limitations about the data sets, which, for example, the circuit recall are keyword basis approximations, which means that a number of shares of recalls remain uncoordinated. And also, like, the classes are imbalanced in severity recalls. For example, the slow severity recall, we only have like 2.3%, which is difficult for all able to classify low severity recall reliably. And our next step is try to do is to expand the event study across multiple manufacturers. Also, we analyze like whether high recall volumes manufacturers are improving or worsening over time in terms of the recalls. And lastly, we are trying to explore the relationships between the recall trends and customer retention and brand loyalty metrics. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. You're about to go live.
Oh, I'm not. I didn't send it out.
You're ready to go.
Yeah. All right, good. All right. My name is Luis Miranda. We are representing Trinity University.
Hi, I'm Luke Morton.
My name is Kwong.
And I'm Ryan O'Leary. Okay, so just looking at this, so we had 4 main innovations. So the first one was the severity scale. So we did it based on 1 to 5. So 1 was the least severe, 5 was the most severe. Then we also normalized the recalls based on the fleet size in order to cross-compare the different manufacturer types. Then we also consolidated these recall types. There were a lot on the data set, and we consolidated to just 6 of them. And then finally, we looked at the impact on stock prices on it. So Kwong will take us further into that.
All right, so I think that recently, the frequency of recall has been nearly doubled since 2010, based on the Takata crisis, the airbag crisis, that one of the biggest recall in the history. And we also found out that we also split it into 5 severity scale, and for some reason 4 and 5, one of the most critical, such as loss of critical function or threatening life, is have a most highest number, even though we have better technology and everything. Every company is getting better in doing the technology and software.
Now moving on to here our component recall analysis, we found that the main shift has been going into software. So given by this bar chart, you can see the shift from mechanical has been kind of decreasing as the technology has kind of improved, and that's become more of the biggest issue. And we see that in the future that trend is going to continue to keep going. And here in this chart heat map, we found that by the categories that we made or that we brought together, that for all manufacturers, the leading one has been occupant safety. I guess going off the point, we're imagining for software to kind of develop and kind of be the future leaders of this defect profile, but as of now, it's component safety. Now moving on to Ryan.
To properly account for risk by manufacturer and for each recall, we created an estimate of each manufacturer's on-the-road fleet by year using production data. And from this, in this graph, we have the number of raw recalls. And then in this graph, we took the number of vehicles potentially affected from said recalls over a 10-year period and took the percentage and divided by our estimated fleet size to get the percentage of vehicles affected by severity level 4 and 5 recalls. We use 4 and 5 because they cost more to each manufacturer. In our financial modeling, we use the logistic regression model to determine whether a recall signals a buy or a sell. Sell signals are harder to determine given market noise and because the first signal after a recall in the market is usually an overreaction. So the price will decrease anyway. So a sell signal, you would look for a decrease over the first 3 days and then continued weakness. A buy signal, you would look for a slight decrease over the first 3 days and then continued stabilization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work, guys. Wonderful job. Awesome. If you weren't able to send the link out to your mother, she could just tell her to go back because it's all up on YouTube. Yeah. Yes, of course, guys. Yeah. Well done.
You're better with that. All right. Hi, everybody. As you guys know, the U.S. market is very vehicle-centered focused. So we took a look at the recalls at these different vehicles. We did filtered by manufacturer. We took a look specifically at personal vehicles. And from there, we also wanted to look at the specific components that were being recalled. Our analysis focused heavily on the years from 2000 to 2025, and Matt's going to take it away to give you a little bit more information about our methodology.
So, first of all, hey team, but
our actual methodology, we use natural language processing to go ahead and categorize each of their recalls for a certain risk. So when we're looking at it, we have, for example, Ford has airbags, so that's going to be a critical because airbags, can cause things like death and other such things, right? So that's going to be really high up in our critical, and it's going to showcase a lot more when it comes to our actual models right here. But if we look over here, we can actually also see that a lot more luxury brands will have a lot more issues when it comes to electricals and when it comes to like software and such like that. But when it comes to more mass-produced manufactured cars, you will have a lot more things like powertrain issues and such. But one thing that we really like to focus on here is not just how it affected the people and the cars itself, like with recalls, we also like to see how it affected the actual stock itself. So we have our scale versus severity graph right here, and scale versus severity is a very, very powerful mindset as it allows us to go ahead and dictate exactly what is a critical kind of component. So for example, one thing that has both scale and severity is airbags, as previously mentioned here, because airbags have things, where, for example, there's no easy way to test airbags. We have, oh yeah, if you're in an accident, then you're relying on them. So it's going to be a lot more risky to kind of deal with them versus something like a engine cooling problem or something like that, because your car gives you a nice warning for it. So when we're looking at it, we're not just looking at how many, but we're looking at how deep the actual recall is. But I'll go ahead and pass it over now so we can go ahead and wrap up.
I think Matthew really said it best. I mean, if you're investing in the automotive industry, you want to look at if these recalls are serious, not just if you're having a lot of them. So worst case scenario, you're having a lot of these recalls and they're very serious, and that is what you want to look out for. And thank you, team.
Thank you, guys. Okay, Syed, we're good. We're done.
You guys are going to go?
Hello, my name's Aurora.
Hi, I'm Anna.
My name is Koi.
And my name is Adil.
We are from Lehigh University. Our poster is not all vehicle recalls carry the same risk. So through our analysis, we found that greater recall count does not necessarily equal greater risk. Through our research, we focused on a few key areas and questions that included how the recall patterns have changed in the 25 years between the year 2000 to 2025. We also looked at whether or not certain manufacturers were repeatedly associated with specific recall categories. We also looked at which vehicle component types pose greater risk to drivers. And we explored how the market reacted to these recall announcements. Finally, we also explored how AI can be used to be implemented in this to see how it can support early risk detection and how it can help to decide recall response.
So next I'll talk a little bit about the analysis, just the key points here. So first we're focusing on personal vehicles, and we can see that there's an increase in the total number of vehicle recall events along with the number of affected vehicles. And we wanted to see, is that related to digital components that have been added to more modern vehicles, or is it some other features? We can see that there's an increase in the number of vehicle recalls related to digital components, but that's not the whole story. So then we move over here and we look at other components related to recall risk, and we see in this box here, this is indicating the component groups with the highest percentage of severity. So we can see braking systems, fuel system, steering, engine, and even electrical systems creating the greatest safety burden. So that allows us to see that electrical systems create a high safety burden, but it's important to consider other factors too. Additionally, we wanted to look at recall components across different brands. You can see that Ford and Chrysler have the highest number of potentially affected vehicles, and we also saw that Tesla had a large share of electrical failures, which makes sense with their product design. Moving on, we wanted to also see which brands are prone to recalls over time, indicating larger issues rather than short-term isolated events, to which we see Ford, BMW, Chrysler, and Volkswagen are consistently ranking top 5 among highest number of severe recalls. Additionally, we looked at completion rates, which shows their responsiveness to vehicle recalls, in which we see Tesla is at 97%. Lastly, we looked at how costly recalls can be and how that affects vehicle responsiveness. We see that thermal and mechanical failures tend to be high cost and more difficult to fix, whereas software control leads to low costs and scalable solutions. Next, I'll pass it over to Adil.
Shortly about our financial analysis, we ran some event studies and linear regressions, and the most important factors were the component type and the brand context. And we think that investors should pay closer attention to component type and the brand context when they're trying to evaluate whether the stock is going to go up or down. And to prove this, we have some real world examples that our teammate Koi will talk about.
Yeah, so after finding some examples about to prove that it's actually not because of the recall type, but due to the components, I figured out that the dishonesty of the manufacturer from their statistic report and also the component that can pose risk to customer life can actually get their stock punished severely. So in order to predict the future recall, I'll pass to my partner Aurora.
And then finally, we are proposing a multi-agent AI framework with 2 branches, the first one being early risk detection, and the second one being a corrective action prediction agent.
Great. All right. Thank you guys so much. Well done. Yeah, of course. Yep. Great work, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, you can watch. Absolutely. All right. You guys are live.
Go for it. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, this is Leo from University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I'd like to start our presentation about the business analytics competition. So first of all, we'd like to do a little bit of overview. Our objective of this analysis is that we would like to see how the recalls frequency and component type has evolved over time, and if our machine learning model can accurately classify the severity. Lastly is that how the catastrophic recalls could impact the stock price of each company and the market reaction according to that. So first of all, we'd like to jump into the data overview and exploration. As you can see, there's the general increase of recalls over time from the year of 2000 to 2025. And we are thinking that this is very likely because of the increase in the regulation and complexity of categories component. So we are very curious of how this works. So we decided to segment this chart into component categories in many. And as you can see, there's the dominant component categories, which is airbag and electrical system, which drive the overall increase trend here. So which prove our theory that the more complex the component is more likely to be broken down and more vulnerable. And lastly, we decided to break down of top 10 companies with the count of recalls. And we have Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, Forest River, BMW, Mercedes. So this one would help us to establish the profile risk later in the further analysis.
And then diving a little more into predictive modeling, we built a machine learning model that used both the recall description and the component data in order to put everything into 3 different classes, high, medium, and low.
Let me just make sure this is off. Yeah, they should be off. Keep going.
Perfect. All good. And then we ended up using the recall description. The recall description, 14 out of the top 15 signals all came from that recall description. And then the biggest cluster that we saw the biggest risk with, and what we really would call the danger zone out of what our clusters were, was the modern cluster 2. This is where you had a lot of technological stuff and modern things with the recall.
Great, and so we wanted to apply our modeling to manufacturers to understand the manufacturer risks. And so what we found was that when we looked at, based on our modeling and based on some of the tags, such as the do not park outside, or the park outside flag and the do not drive flag, we found that Hyundai and Kia were the manufacturers with the highest risk. And as you can see here, they share the highest critical percentage rate, or they have the most critical recalls by percentage. And so a little bit part of this is because Hyundai and Kia, they focus on kind of newer EV cars. And while innovation is a bad thing, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the technology and the supply chain to catch up. And so you might see a bit more defects or a little bit more of a learning process with these companies. And so on the flip side, you can see that Toyota and Honda were the least risk given their traditional and robust kind of standards. And just quickly.
So I'm going to do this last part very, very quickly. So I want to take your attention to these two graphs. These graphs look at an individual stock event or an individual recall event and the company's stock price before and after. So this is critical recalls and this is medium severity recalls. Critical severity recalls, you can see a general downward trend, whereas with medium recalls, they cluster around zero. They cluster around average with the market. However, in both cases, there's a lot of variance, so it doesn't give us a great story. So looking at these, we can kind of make inferences that stock price has more so to do with overall market conditions rather than individual events. And of course, there's some outliers. So we have Tesla right here. Generally speaking, it doesn't give us a very good picture. So from an investor perspective, we suggest instead of looking at individual events, we suggest building out specific manufacturer risk profiles so that we can make investments based on company risk rather than individual events.
Thanks, guys. Okay, Syed, we're wrapped.
Hi, I'm Justin Fernandez.
Soraya Jordan. Jessica Chavli.
And I'm Mariam Sheikh. Together we are from University of New Haven and we're looking at what happens when a safety crisis becomes a financial one, specifically how US automotive industry impacts the stock market.
Let's say you're a portfolio manager and you get an email or a text message saying major automotive have issued a recall. What do? Do you sell or do you hold your stocks? And does the recall type have more effect?
To find out, we pulled 25 years of data from NHTSA and we focused on 6 manufacturers that together command roughly 70% of the US personal vehicle market share.
We focused on personal vehicle recalls from 2000 to 2025 and research to find structural shifts, technological changes, and seasonal patterns.
We have also built a severity scoring framework, critical, severe, moderate, minor. We have done that so that we can go beyond from discounting the recall to actually measure their risk.
We try to factor these risks and to see if they do have an effect on the market. We'll walk you through it now.
First, what is the recall process and pipeline? Well, we need 2 triggers, one of 2. Either the manufacturer self-reports or the consumer, a driver, sends in a complaint to NHTSA. From there, we have the Office of Defects Investigation, investigate the recall and confirm whether it is a reliable recall. From there, the manufacturer must notify the owners within 60 days, and within that, NHTSA provides the tracking.
Now this is where the severity scoring framework, because not every recalls carry the same weight, we have classified into 4 tiers. Critical, that involves death or do not drive explicitly. Severe, that includes major injury risk. Moderate, that includes minor injury risk. And minor, that includes documentation or cosmetic problems.
And we tested it. We tested looking at whether a car, basically before 2010, we saw recalls related to mechanical. And after 2010, all of them became more software related. And we saw a significant change. We saw approximately 4% change. What basically shows is like car nowadays is more of like a computer on wheels and is recalling like one.
The component level recalls also tells a rich story. Standardized residual where anything above 2 means brand recall these components more than industry average. This is very necessary for risk assessment because it does not tell you how often the recall occurs but what kind of a defect exposure it carries. Recall seasonality by company, all brands, for example Stellantis and Ford showing the statistically significant trend recall activity. However, Toyota and Honda are flat. And recall trends by company, all brands are showing increasingly recall upward trend. However, GM is flat all around.
Yep, and with that picture in mind, answering the question that we started with, when a recall is issued, does it move the stock? Well, we did a 2-way fixed-to-fixed model, which tells us that the recall factor has minimal to no importance when it comes to the stock market because there's various factors that can impact the stock price than just recalls.
And we saw it with numbers. We did see, like, other than Stellantis, all the other brands do have a change, but they are not significant. However, Stellantis does show that with a critical recall, it does show 1.5% change. What that basically means is if you hold Stellantis' stocks, you got to watch out for a critical recall.
So, yep, so the bottom line is not all recalls are created equal, and the market already knows that. Thank you.
Great work, guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, very good job. Very good job. Yes, good job. I won't say anything.
Beautiful, awesome. Wonderful. So throughout our analysis, we looked at vehicle recalls in 2000 to 2025 in the United States affecting personal vehicles. With this, we found that industry events and other national crises impacted the severity of recalls and also the recall count. Especially within 2010 when the beginning of the electronics boom, when Nissan released their first electrical vehicle, the Leaf, or even the Ford infotainment system switching from hands-free device calling to on-screen device. It was really important to note too that throughout this, that severity or the amount of recall events does not equate to the severity of the recall. So especially in 2015 to 2016, while there were not as many events, the amount of vehicles affected is a lot higher versus the peak later on in 2024 and 2025 with electrical vehicle recalls. So you can see that less vehicles were affected considering as less Americans own electrical vehicles. We also found statistically significant that the exposure amount is varying for each brand. So you see premium brands like Mercedes-Benz and Hyundai, Kia having more significant recall amounts and issues, especially in electronics where they are over the average brand amount.
So when we measured the severity of these recalls, we categorized them into 4 different categories: critical, high, medium, and low. And after this technological boom in these vehicles, we found that a majority of them are in the high and critical category. So this means that these recalls are having things like fire risk, crash risk, even complete system failure. So with the influence of these new technological components in these vehicles, we really found that the main takeaway is that companies need to switch their view from an engineering perspective on recalls to a more financial perspective, because once these recalls are deemed dangerous, they're going to lose a lot of investment. Customers aren't going to purchase these vehicles anymore, and it's just not going to end well for the company. So by switching their view to more financial focuses, they're able to more or less diminish the effects of these very negative recalls. Thank you.
Okay, A1's finished.
Was that fast enough?
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I'll let the camera hang out. You could have gone longer. Do you know what's left? Just A4? What else? A1. Oh, C1 to C1. Oh, okay. All right. Should do you want to switch to RJ and I'll move? Okay. Okay. C. Do we do B3? We haven't done B3? Okay, wait. You guys didn't get it videoed yet? No? Okay. Thanks for helping me out. So just keep your presentation like quick as you can, like 3 minutes, something like that. I mean, yeah, if you can. We're just alternating between the live stream cameras, so somebody else is not presenting. When they wrap, we can start, unless the judge comes up. So you can just pass the mic around, just hold it nice and close, you know, so it's easy to hear. And just like smile at me when you're done, so I can obviously tell that you're finished. It's like, it's hard to hear.
Sure. So wait, are we like...
And yeah, you'll just stay nice and
Do you want this to tell them for you? We introduce ourselves.
Yeah. So we'll just hang tight for a second while another team's presenting. Oh, we're good to go. Oh, okay, we can start.
Our turn. Oh, our turn.
Okay, my name is Ryan Grampone.
I'm Stephanie Maneri.
I'm Lisa Prestopino.
I'm Michaela Marshall.
And we're coming from Ramapo College of New Jersey to present Recall Trends and Market Impact. Our presentation aims to look at how different recalls affect the stock market and different trends. So we looked at 7,500 different records of vehicle recalls from 2000 to 2025 in order to find out if investors could make more risk-aware decisions based on our analyses.
And so in our analysis, we did some data cleaning and data organization, and then we also did exploratory analysis just to look at trends across time, manufacturers, and components. And then we also did severity score modeling just to understand what recalls were considered the most severe. And then we paired this with the number of vehicles recalled to understand the overall market implications. And then finally, we did hypothesis testing and financial analysis to compare this to the stock market and what investors should invest in.
Thank you. Okay, so on to the data cleaning. So first we dropped any records that were outside of the years of 2000 and then 2025, and we dropped any record that wasn't of the recall type vehicle. Then we took that a little bit further and we wanted to only look at the personal vehicle recall types, personal vehicle recalls. So we got rid of anything that, we did this Python text analysis and we got rid of anything that included fire truck, ambulance, police vehicle. We checked for these keywords like that, and including also like semi-trucks and heavy-duty trucks. And we just dropped anything that had those keywords. Whether they were separated by a dash or by a space or by parentheses, we just dropped them. So we only had 7,532 records. Oh, right. I don't know why I was doing that. So we only had the 7,532 records, all of which pertain to personal vehicle recalls within the time frame.
Okay, perfect. So moving on to our data, as you can see on the left, we have the number of recalls with the manufacturers. So on this side, Ford dominates the market, and then followed by Chrysler and GM. And then on the other side, we have frequency. So Tesla is very high up there, and then followed by Chrysler and Ford.
Okay, so then we wanted to look at the connection between manufacturers and the component recall type. So we did a chi-square association test and a Kramer's V correlation to find the exact correlation between the manufacturer and the component recall type, which are both categorical variables. And this proved that manufacturers are not struggling with specific component types more than other manufacturers are. As you can see, this visualization showing the manufacturers with the most recalls. You can see the pattern of the distribution of these component types is about the same.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the amount of people that were potentially affected between this time frame. And as you could see, there is a spike between 2014 and 2016, and this is because of the Takata airbag scandal that occurred at this time. And as you could see afterwards, there was there's an obvious difference in what happened before. So the pre-Takata levels were never back to how it was previously. So afterwards, you could see that the levels don't go back.
All right, so next up we wanted to look more at the stock market and how investors react to specifically vehicle components and their recalls. And so to do this, we took the abnormal stock return and we compared this to the recall announcement. And from this, we found that child seats had the most negative perceived reaction from investors. And this is because they're more of an unusual issue. I know we spoke about airbags and powertrains and seatbelts, those are much more common issues, and so they are able to be predicted more often by the stock market, and overall they are not perceived as much of a risk. And so from this, we found that investors don't react too much to recall size, but they rather react to the severity of the recall and how unique it could be.
Yeah, so going into recall severity, we created a subjective severity scoring index where we placed every type of recall on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most severe with recalls that required a do not drive advisory, and lower around 1 to 3 being recalls that happened but did not have to do with safety features, weren't administered any advisories or engines. The car was able to function normally, but maybe it was just an inconvenience to replace something. So we used these numbers to find out the overall recall severity across manufacturers, and we found that Tesla broke into the top 5 of recalls, which was shown by their recall rate, and that's typically because of the technology that was used in those vehicles.
All right, so moving on, we also did conduct an event study, and this focused on Ford, General Motors, Toyota, and Tesla, just because out of all of them, they had the most available stock market data, and it was the most relevant to our study. And so to do this, we took the recall announcement and we matched this with the we matched this with the stock market return of each of these manufacturers, and then we compared this to the S&P 500, which is just overall a stock market index of like top 500, etc. And so from this, we did it through an 11-day period where 5 days before and 5 days after the recall announcement, just so that way we could isolate the recall effect and overall understand what specifically was causing these reactions. And so from this, we were able to find that there was a general decrease for each of these manufacturers, but they were all overall able to bounce back fairly quickly. And this shows that there generally was a statistically insignificant reaction to this. And we also conducted a hypothesis test which showed the same results, that it was statistically insignificant. And so overall, this shows that investors don't react too strongly to recalls in the stock market, and rather that they are more focused on company performance and overall perception of these manufacturers and the severity of the recalls impacting these events.
Okay, so to kind of end us off, we're going to be talking about the major components and what really drives these recalls. So as you could see over here in the orange, that is the electrical component. So as technology continues to be more complex, electrical will probably end up seeing that continues with that trend. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney St. Preux.
Hi, my name is Camila Ramos Cruz.
Hi, my name is T.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. And we're from the University of Connecticut. Today we're here to talk about how we're analyzing data on car recalls, and the title of our project is From Factory to Finance.
Sure, so let's get started. So we are teams from University of Connecticut School of Business, and our case explores whether the automotive recalls are no longer just a safety issues, but it's also an emerging financial risk signal to the automotive industry and the stock market in general. So that's why we comes up with the story that is From Factory to Finance, the hidden cost of our recall. And to get started with our analysis, Courtney will introduce you our amazing methodology that we used.
Thank you so much, T. So pretty much our methodology was we started off with 30,000 pieces of information on Excel. We moved this information over to SQL in order to delete the null values, which were the missing pieces of information. Then once we did this, we decided that we didn't really need 30,000 pieces of information, so we deleted what was not relevant to us. We did this on, as I said, mostly using Excel, SQL, and Python, and so we removed everything from 1966 to 1999, keeping just the last 2 decades, 2000 to 2025, and then we also removed the non-personal vehicles, so we removed commercial makes, motorcycles, Volvo, Mitsubishi, and other vehicles, leaving us with 6,500 pieces of information. And then we decided to rank them based on severity, so we standardized the text rather than reading a whole bunch of information. We decided to just look for keywords in order to indicate the severity of the recall. And so we weren't just looking at the volume, how many recalls there were, we were looking at how serious they are. And so we were able to go further and go into our insights, which show us that volume doesn't always indicate the most severe or dangerous impact. So we can see that Volkswagen has a higher critical rate, which means their recalls are more critical, while Ford just had a lot of recalls. And then we can bring that down into components and how there's a shift from software recalls to mechanical. Sorry, he's silly. And so here we have some graphs of of mechanical recalls and electrical. And so we have a graph that shows the eventual crossover between electrical and mechanical. And so we were able to go down into our stock influence and impact between the most critical recalls from the manufacturers and the most volume or the highest amount of them. And we were able to go in depth further
by looking at airbags as a specific component and looking at that as the impact on stocks and the companies in general. So for example, Honda, Toyota, Nissan, and Volkswagen. And we were able to go down into our recommendations that Stephanie will go further into.
Yeah, so we have 4 recommendations that we'd give to manufacturers. So the first one is fix assembly first. So we saw that the number one cause of recalls are that the parts aren't being correctly assembled at the manufacturer. So we think that if there's a checklist that manufacturers adhere to and just make sure everything is going properly, then that could fix a lot. Next would be to test the software before it shifts. So catching any errors and bugs in the software while development can help a lot too. Next would be to incorporate manufacturer critical rates. So as we saw before, high recall counts doesn't necessarily mean that it is a severe recall, but going along with the severity score would be more crucial and important for manufacturers to use. And then we would also say to monitor recall composition shifts. So tracking once the recall shift from mechanical to software would also be a lead indicator of manufacturer risks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manhattan University. Go Huskies!
Great work, guys. Well done.
I can get him. No? Okay. No. Yeah, I'm waiting.
Just quick. Yeah, we gotta go. Okay. Hello, I'm Mercedes.
I'm Amaris Alvarez.
And I'm Carson Benza. We're from St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas, and today we're explaining our analysis on the evolving recall risk in the U.S. auto industry. So over the past 25 years, vehicle recalls in the United States have increased significantly, raising questions about how risk in the auto industry is evolving. Recalls are often seen as isolated incidents, but we wanted to understand if there was a consistent system-level pattern across manufacturer, components, and time, and if these risks are related to the stock market reactions.
Moving forward, we collected the data from NHTSA. We cleaned the data and structured it, just making sure that it's consistent within the components and the manufacturers. We created key variables to compare the severity, frequency, and the components, and conducted analysis using trend analysis, manufacturer comparisons, and component level breakdowns to identify the reoccurring patterns. And we did an event study using CAP-M, which is just the expected returns using CAP-M.
So going into our quick analysis, the first 2 graphs show that there has been a large increase in recalls in the past 25 years, and we see a shift from mechanical-based recalls due to mechanical issues to now system-level technology recalls due to programming issues, anything related to chips, anything related to those technological advancements.
Moving forward with the component category, we did categorize them. Top 2 would be engine, fuel, and electrical software, just showing that risk is concentrated and that it's not random. Other can be seen as way more significant, but it's just because categories are unrelated.
In this next model, we took a look at
the different component categories and their overall severity scores. So we just calculated this by looking at the recall descriptions and giving them a severity score. So as you can see, airbags and electrical software were our most severe scores. Moving on to our heat map, we organized it by taking a look at manufacturers in the auto industry and the different components for these manufacturers and the recalls frequency of these. So as you can see, Ford and Mercedes had a very high frequency in engine and fuel, and they also were a high amount of our data. So that we believe that it skewed some of the engine and fuel data, and that is the reason why there was a higher recall distribution in those areas. And then moving on to a recall announcement. So this was a model built taking a look at how recall announcement affected stock prices. So in order to do this, we need to find our abnormal return, which is just your actual stock price minus expected return. And to find our expected return, we did our CAPM analysis using the risk-free rate plus the beta times the risk market premium. So this dotted line represents when the recall announcement happened. Anything to the right would be after, anything to the left would be before it. So we found that there was a 2.5% abnormal return the day after the recall. And ultimately, it led us to find that although there was this large abnormal return, there was a p-value of 0.61, which led us to know that recall announcements are already embedded in the stock firm valuation and that this was not significant. And then moving on to key findings, we found that as frequency rose, system level and technology recalls also increased, just showing that the more complex cars get, the more recalls they have. And then next, with Ford, they made up about 22% of total recalls, while they only have a market cap of about 15% of the total auto industry, telling us that the data may have been skewed and that recalls may be affecting Ford's firm image.
So just to summarize our findings, recall risk is not random. It follows a consistent system-level pattern with failures increasingly driven by technology-related issues. So these firms should we recommend these firms to implement more business analytics into their risk management and focus on reducing frequency and the overall risk that comes with these recalls. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Great work, guys. Well done. Well done. Yeah, congratulations.
Yes. Yes. Is RJ rolling or no? No, I am.
I was not going to because they would have had
I don't. No.
San Antonio is just coming about.
Okay, A4 is ready. A4 is ready. What do you want to do? You want to do A? Okay. Are you guys ready to go live?
Oh yeah.
It's been wait.
try.
All right, you're on live.
Thank you.
Sorry guys, another
And shot. All right. So in our research, we posed the overarching question of if recalls have a drastic effect on the cumulative abnormal return. And in short, they don't. When looking at our event study, it shows a negative drift that occurs prior to the recall announcement and a sharp sort of recovery after. And when we look at our confidence interval, it suggests that the overall market impact of a typical recall is statistically insignificant. We further looked into this by doing a sentiment analysis in which we took variables like the spikes in Google searches, along with the duration of these spikes, along with seeing if electric vehicles receive more negative impact from receiving a lot of sentiment attention. And all three of these regressions came back to be statistically insignificant. So on average, your sentiment does not impact the stock performance. There was, however, an outlier, which was Tesla's 2024 recall, which was their largest recall, which received the largest amount of Google searches and attention. And you do see that there is a drop in the stock price at the peak of the interest. Moving on to our pre-recall complaints by components, we see that components like powertrain, suspension, and steering dominate. And later into the poster, you will see that these three components correlate to more negative abnormal return. And the last thing I want to point your attention to is our donut chart, which shows the top 10 components that break often. And what we found was that components that break more are often complained about the least. And this is because consumers more often complain about things that they can actually feel. So if there's a problem with somebody steering, they're going to complain about that more than if there's a problem with their fuel gauge.
Thank you, Kania. So I'll just keep it short. So what we did, we looked at three main components. So the three main components was tech final severity score and do not drive. And we concluded with these three main components that these all predict car recall size, and it's cheaper to do over-the-air repairs than physical repairs. And there's more severity with technological increases in car manufacturing. That's why you see almost none on low severity right here. And the main key point was airbags, which is do not drive after the Takata recalls. And now I'm going to take it to Catherine.
So in this bottom section, we connected recall characteristics directly to investor behavior. And what we found is that while most recalls are routine and produce no differentiation from 0% abnormal return, we do find that reaction drops as size and severity increases, as our line graph supports here. You see larger recalls are going to produce more negative returns, and recalls over 1 million vehicles are, on average, can produce negative 1.34% cumulative abnormal return, which is a clear signal. More than size, we also looked at who built it and what broke. And we found that manufacturers like Stellantis and Mitsubishi face much steeper penalties than their peers, even controlling for recall size. Our decision tree further qualifies this, with the first and third split already beginning to isolate manufacturer and component types. Our regression quantifies this, and it helped us find the steering penalty, a negative 2.06% cumulative abnormal return for steering-related recalls. However, all these punishments are limited. We've discovered the fatigue pivot. So with 0 recalls announced in the previous 90 days, we see insignificant market reaction. However, with 1 to 3 recalls in the previous 90 days, we'll see there are most negative abnormal reactions, and that is the market penalizing repeat offenders. Finally, past 3 recalls, we see something counterintuitive happen. The reaction flips and becomes positive as the market becomes desensitized. Finally, we looked into timing. When are recalls announced? Is there trends or clusters? And we found that many recalls, there's too many same-day pileups to be random. So recalls occur in clear clusters, and we discovered upon further analysis the leader's penalty. So the first leader, the leader of a wave to announce their recall, faces steeper penalties than their peers because they carry the full brunt of investor surprise.
Crushed it. A1's good. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
I hope you're enjoying watching the presentations. To tell a little bit about us, we are representing Rutgers Business School. My name is Krishna.
My name is Sakshi.
And my name is Haindavi.
So, when we looked into our data, we identified 3 main stakeholders: consumers, investors, and regulators. And because each of them have different needs and they respond to failure differently. Ultimately, when we looked at the timeline, we noticed 3 structural events that shaped the improvement of reporting information, such as the TREAD Act, the TREAD Act in 2000 that was caused by the Firestone recall in 2000 as well. Then the Toyota recall in 2009, and the Takata bankruptcy and recall in 2014. Once we got our timeline, we looked more into the data, and let's see what we find.
So as for the exploration, we separated the data into vehicle manufacturers and equipment suppliers, and out of the many charts we created, these were the 3 highlight ones. So the number of recall reports received per year, which is significantly increasing. The top 10 manufacturers by potentially affected, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler leading there. Takata is number 4. And components over time, which are also increasing, with airbags being one of the prominent ones. As for the qualitative portion, we looked at the text analytics, and there were 4 text columns which we split into categories and looked at the severity score, which Sakshi is going to tell you.
So we then looked at the severity score, and what we found out of the severity score is that average severity by component is airbag, steering, and fuel system. And this is crazy because when you with suppliers, you expect companies expect to have in-house production with these, but it's not the case. They do a third-party supplier. And then we looked at the mean and median. The mean got a lot bigger after 2014, which supports our storyline. And then we looked at severity versus volume matrix, and we found out that Porsche, Toyota, BMW, Land Rover, and Mercedes, they are the safer volumes.
So when we looked at the data, we wanted to see how this makes an impact on the financial market. So once we found out that the data included both vehicle manufacturers and supplier manufacturers, we looked at the difference, and we could see that OEMs, the vehicle manufacturers like Ford and these big companies, make a lot more of an impact and are more erratic in the stock market. And that's because consumer risk and their reputation of these companies affects the stock market prices. We also conducted a CAR analysis, which is cumulative abnormal return, and we did this for both these OEMs and the components. What we found was that Tesla actually has a positive reaction to the NHTSA recall announcements, which seems counterintuitive, but it's because Tesla does a really good job at recovering from these recalls and providing over-the-air software updates that solve them. And we continue to further our analysis because from conducting OSL, which we see that software updates or software recalls are very significant, as they are one of the 2 most significant from the 16 variables that we conducted in our study. And this is because some companies do this really well, and some companies aren't working on it. And so this is something to look out for the future. As for a recommendation to consumers, the most important thing to them is their safety. So staying in companies that have a low severity score and low volume are the most important. So if you can, get a Porsche, but It does not. Toyotas, Land Rovers, BMWs, and Mercedes does a really good job. This will also be a really good option for investors because they have the lowest amount of recalls, so they are a stable investment. But for investors, they should also keep on the lookout for EVs and other companies that are working towards electric vehicles and hybrid models, because that's something that's going to continue to improve. And lastly, for regulators, working on bridging that gap for accountability between the suppliers and the OEMs, and improving kind of trying to prevent these recalls from happening in the first place. And for them, they should also work on creating a new framework for electric vehicles, as they're not the same as these mechanical recalls that are currently happening up until this point. So, especially for the future, staying on the lookout for technology and their new advancements. And we also created a dashboard as well that has all our data compiled as well. So, thank you so much. Yes.
Yep, well done, well done.
We are Team 2 from St. John's University. My name is Cassie.
My name is Stefan. I'm Andrew.
My name is Charles.
Okay, so the question we're trying to answer is, can investors gain an edge in the market by using auto recall data? The automotive industry is massive, and recalls happen all the time, and with recalls come heavy financial consequences like legal exposure and repair costs. But what we want to know is if that risk has already been priced into the market and if there's still a window to act. Now, we were able to build a machine learning-driven strategy on Q1 2026 data, which is a strategy that outperformed the S&P 500 by more than 5 percentage points. Basically, what we want to do is make sure that investors have an edge in the market and make sure they can act before anybody else knows that there's a problem in the automotive industry. Now I'll pass it on to Andrew to discuss more of what we found.
Thank you. So as Cassie mentioned, the big question is, can we use recall data to help Riverdale Investments build an investment strategy and predict stock market reactions? Or as we like to say, detect that smoke before the fire. Just off initial observation, we found that Stellantis, General Motors, and Ford were the manufacturers in the industry that led by total recalls. We then analyzed how recall frequency changes over time using a structural break regression. And we then looked at components by manufacturer. Look at this heat map we have, and it emphasizes the differences in components by recall volume across manufacturers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. And since we understood that, we then used text analysis to look at how severe recalls actually were. And we used text analysis here where we weighted keywords like crash, fire, and burn heavier than lower risk terms like malfunction or mislabeling based on how the NHTSA evaluated them. And what we found is that most recalls fell in that low to medium severity range. And this was an important input for our event study model, where we saw if higher severity recalls led to larger stock market reactions. And on that note, I'll pass it to Charles.
Thank you, Andrew. So in order to analyze the financial implications of the recalls, we decided to start off with a traditional event study approach. Now, this allows us to determine if recalls have a meaningful impact on stock prices. Now, going straight into results, we can see there's essentially no average market reaction, as the mean abnormal returns around the day of the recalls follow very close to the zero line, and the mean cumulative abnormal return was statistically indistinguishable from zero. Now, the main takeaway here is that these results are consistent with a semi-strong efficient market hypothesis, which basically states that all publicly available information is already priced in by the time of the recall announcement. Now, this is where we decided to pivot to focus on the pre-event signals, because we decided if there were to be an edge, it would have to be before a recall was ever announced. Now, these pre-event signals include consumer complaints, technical service bulletins or TSBs, and official NHTSA investigations, which were taken as structured data sets directly from the NHTSA website. Now, how do we actually use this data in order to accurately predict a recall? This is where we introduced a supervised machine learning model called XGBoost, otherwise known as extreme gradient boosting. Now, this tells us if a recall is likely to come for a specific company, but how do we actually use that in order to create an actionable investment strategy? This is where the recall impact scorecard comes into play, because we can see if a recall fires off for a company like Rivian, we basically get the green or red light of whether we should trade based on this signal or skip it and wait for a stronger signal. And with that, I will pass it on to Stefan.
Thank you, Charles. So this takes us to our investment model, where we use shorting to earn profit for Riverdale. Our model has two stages: recall probability and position sizing. In stage one, we use those recall pre-event signals and find out which companies have a high chance of a recall coming in their future. We then take those companies as signals and size each position using the Kelly criterion with a bunch of components that we've mentioned earlier in the project. Now we have a specific amount to use on each position for Riverdale investments in our strategy. And in a step-by-step pipeline, it would look like this. Each month, a Riverdale investments analyst would gather those pre-event signals, run it through our model, and get those strong signals, which they then size using the Kelly criterion, and then place their shorts weeks ahead of any recall announcement, and they will capture that entire gradual decline when they exit that position when a recall is announced. And so we used our model and tested it on the first 3 months of this year, and we were able to earn Riverdale investments a 1.1 positive ROI and over $100,000 in profit. Yeah.
I wasn't even looking.
3 minutes, y'all.
Okay.
3 minutes. 3 minutes. My name is Shelton Manning Jr. I'm a third-year junior, majoring in agribusiness and business management.
My name is Chelsea Thompson. I'm a business economics major, a rising senior.
My name is Liberty Solano, a rising junior agribusiness and marketing major from SC State as well.
My name's Eli Moore. I'm an agribusiness major and a junior from South Carolina State University, and I'm excited to speak about the evolution of vehicle defects in U.S. recalls. Here we analyzed recalls from 2000 to 2025, looking at recall frequency, failure types, and severity. We wanted to look at mechanical issues versus electrical issues. So here we have how in 2000 there was about 100 defects per year that raised to 200. A lot of that because of electrical issues, and especially along this time in 2013 to 2014. And then we also saw that recall activity is heavily concentrated among a small number of manufacturers. About General Motors is a great example of this. A few major manufacturers. Most manufacturers in the data set have low recall counts, suggesting the burden is not evenly spread. And this uneven distribution raises question about high recall counts reflect larger productive volume and lower quality control and larger regulatory scrutiny.
After getting total recalls by manufacturer in a year, we had to focus on the severity scores. Severity scores would include anything between 1 and 5, 5 being the most deadliest, 1 being the lightest of issues to fix. We saw that there was a higher severity score of 4 and 5, which means that it was indeed more than a minor fix. These recalls were more impactful and needed more time to be taken care of. Moving on to the shift nature of vehicle defects, we had to focus on this year 2000. 2000 had a little electronic recalls, but if we move forward towards all the way down to 2000, 2025, or when basically manufacturing became more electronic dependent, these recalls started to rise, and that's where we see these comparisons and graphs between electronic and mechanical.
Digging deeper into this data, we see that airbags account for the highest number of recalls, and electrical systems also follow airbags as being the second highest component in recall data. Recall activity may remain consistent across all 4 quarters. That suggests that defects were not seasonally driven, and the trend that we see of electrical systems being high signifies the industry trend from mechanical to electrical. So for Tesla, we picked a company that is very branded on innovation and technology, so that's why we chose to do their case study on a financial case study on Tesla specifically.
And this graph in particular represents a 4-week trend, the 4 weeks being the midpoint, which is that drop that we saw the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after. Using the formula after price minus before price divided by before price times 100, we're able to get that 4.6 decrease in the stock parts. But we didn't realize that also after that 4.6 decrease, the stock started to trend up a little bit, which then improved to us or told us that stock markets, investors didn't really necessarily care about the reliability of said object. They just care about the components of how fast you could fix it, how easy it was to fix, and how much money did it cost to fix things, or anything of that sort.
Looking deeper into Tesla's recall burden, the electrical systems were the most component that was dictated by Tesla's recalls. And components like seatbelts, tires, and visibility issues, which are more mechanical, were not as high. So this represents that Tesla, as a brand that prides itself on sophistication, their highest recall count being in electrical systems is due to the innovation that they're making in the scene.
To conclude our analysis, the data shows a clear shift between the vehicle defects, starting from the mechanical failures to the electronic system issues. With a company like Tesla, it gives us the opportunity to emphasize on those electronic companies who not only have recalls, but also are overlooked strictly because of the image that the companies follow, comparing them to companies like General Motors and Honda, which are more viewed as mechanical companies, but also face similar recalls. With that, we also are able to analyze the financial risk between the two. A company like Tesla has faced much more stock market drops compared to other companies despite having these similar recalls. And with that, our research allowed us to analyze both the financial risk and also the physical outcome of the automotive industry in the future and also past, and how it will change with the newer electronic software updates that are being added every day.
With our research, we want to emphasize the impact of innovation and safety. And so our data really shows that our society's, basically our society, how we value safety versus innovation. Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done. Thank you.
So our presentation was covering recalls and their effect on the stock market. We're from Fairfield University. My name is Austin.
My name is Kang.
My name is Alex.
Okay, so the first thing we looked at was the amount of recalls. So we noticed recalls are going up almost double, right? So recalls are increasing at 92%, but at the same time, a very interesting find was that fatalities are going down nearly 20% in the same range, and we're trying to figure out why that's the case. The first thing we did was contact some industry specialists to try to get some validations and test our hypothesis.
Yes. So to make sure that our model logic is making sense, we reached out to 4 different experts. Tanya Topelfum, Director of NHTSA Office Defect Investigation, Matt Moore, Laurie Hellinga from HLDI, and Jack Fisher from Consumer Reports. And
then not only that, but in addition to the industry validation, we also utilized 14 data sets. So it was 2 plus 12 extra data sets that we got, and we also verified them to make sure that they were accurate and actually correct sources.
yes. All right. Look at the raw recall counts. We basically can see the Ford obvious on top because they make them a lot, the most car, and they sell a lot of cars. But after we normalize it by 100,000 vehicles sold per recall, Mercedes, luxury German's car, actually moved up the top and next to BMW and Volkswagen.
And then diving into the models that we used, we were trying to figure out if text alone can predict recall severity. Whether severity affects anything long term is another question, but we were able to get 91% accuracy using XGBoost with TF-IDF, which is a term frequency inverse document frequency, which tries to find the most important features within a text or a doc that could potentially affect the result and try to predict something from that. And we found the top feature being metal fragments. That kind of ties into Takata. It kind of also tells us that broad components are not very significant, because after this we looked at all these features that we had, the top features, and to see if maybe the top features will affect the stock price. And we noticed it doesn't really affect the stock price. And then we dived into a different approach.
And then from kind of our research, we found that recalls fall into kind of 4 different categories. The first is kind of supplier and external, like we kind of we spoke a little bit about Takata, and then we also had Firestone. But in these situations, we kind of saw the manufacturers push the blame onto the suppliers, so we didn't see great effects to their stock. And then second, we kind of see design/visible things, which is like these things are clearly visible to like the news, to investors and everybody, so it's not really that big of a shock to everyone, and the stock price doesn't change much. And then the second kind of really not really important thing is kind of like software recalls, which is quite common, and it's easily resolved through just a simple update. But the main thing that we see like affect the stock is kind of quality control issues, and these issues are like extremely hidden to anyone or to most people except the people on the floor doing the quality control. Like for example, here we have a incorrect weld on a toe link on a rear suspension piece, and like really nobody can see this. So when it kind of gets announced that it's an issue and it's causing major kind of like safety problems, it's quite a shock to everyone, and that results in the kind of drastic stock drops that we see.
And diving deeper into the findings, our short-term finding for the 11-day car, cumulative abnormal return, so that's versus the market, we found a negative 66 bips drop. And then we dived into our Act 2, we called it, which is a 180-day card, which we're looking at a long-term effect. So we're trying to see if these quality control issues are affecting a company long-term. And what we noticed is it does seem to affect the company long-term as well, not only short-term, but long-term, which does highlight the investor uncertainty due to quality control issues. This kind of demonstrates this, that the averages hide the signal. So we have all recall events here, and then on the right, we have the hidden QC recalls. And you can see each side is uplifted not only for short-term, but long-term as well. And then just a quick interaction graph showing the difference for the median. And then we took this and we turned it into a trading idea. Very simple, just a back test where we short a stock if that quality control recall comes to light, and then you buy it back.
Yes. So lastly, we went another step when we made the model. We understand that above, the stock market doesn't care what failed. It cares about why it fails. So for this model, we're able to predict a recall 6 months prior, and basically it will use data set from NHTSA recall, NHTSA's investigation, NHTSA complaint, and then NHTSA TSB, which is technical service bulletins. And the model will be able to go deeply into the complaint using TF-IDF, if we were to understand and wrap the meaning of those words, comes out, and then we'll flag into a bucket as our visual proof for every 100 case. If we look at 42 riskiest case, if you research and investigate, 14 of them will be a real recall, which are around 76% recalls. And our entire model is useful for government employees. They could cut half of human resource and use our model and able to find 3 out of 4 recall every time they research. Only research with 42%. Recalls.
Okay, so just a quick message to our stakeholders. Pretty much just pay attention to quality control issues. Don't pay attention to other recalls. If you're an investor, if you work at a company in terms of safety and NHTSA, look at the quality control issues because those are the ones really telling the story. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I went to St. John's South for 18. Ladies took me that way.
Okay, one with you guys. Oh, but I want one because it's gonna go on. Hopefully they'll like.
Make sure we're not missing it. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Excellent. Thank you. This is yes. This is why.
of course.
announce we officially conclude this poster section. End of today's live stream. And so please go upstairs to the 5th floor.
5B.
So 5B, right?
5B, yes.
5B. We're going to have dinner over there. So enjoy, and we have more challenge tomorrow. So I'll see you upstairs.
We should just remind them that we'll do the
one team member upstairs. We're going to do the lucky draw for the third day's room division.